Chapter 227. The next day, in the first grade classroom, Julie sat in her seat, motionlessly looking in front of her. Her face was as emotionless as usual, but there was a gloomy atmosphere surrounding her, making it very clear that she was not in a good mood. "Are you still upset about last night's celebration?" Ivan, who was sitting next to Julie, sighed. "Didn't I tell you, it wasn't your fault that you fell asleep halfway?" Yeah, Julie's tone was still a bit gloomy. "But, it's rare to celebrate with everyone. What do you think we are celebrating for?" Ivan pointed at Julie's head with his finger and said reproachfully. "Since we were able to celebrate this time for reaching level 2, then next time we can celebrate for reaching level 3. Celebrating is something that can be done at any time, so don't mind it anymore." Hearing this, the gloomy atmosphere surrounding Julie was slightly relieved, making Ivan show a helpless expression. She really is like a child. Because of a small matter, she was gloomy. Because of a few words of advice, her mood improved. In addition to her appearance and slightly natural personality, she kept saying, "Daddy, Mommy," and so on. From this point of view, perhaps Julie was really no different from a child. Sitting behind Ivan and Julie, Noah quietly listened to the conversation between his two friends, but his mind had already drifted away. Under the moonlight, the girl pointed the rifle at him. Although he did not know the other's true identity, the rifle she used, no matter from its appearance or aura, was without a doubt the Blaze. In fact, before the girl took out the rifle, she did shout the words, "Blaze." Therefore, the Blaze, that should not have appeared, but was the same type as Noah, was indeed materialized by a girl. Needless to say, to be able to use the Blaze, the other must be a surpasser. Then, was the other party also a student of this school? But if that was the case, then it would be the same as Noah. A student who had such a special Blaze would definitely receive the attention of all the teachers and students in the school. It was impossible that no one had heard of it before. In that case, the identity of the other party was a mystery. However, the other party seemed to be quite persistent about Noah. The reason should be the so-called kindred spirits, right? Who was the other party? With this question in mind, Noah fell into deep thought. At this moment, at the door of the classroom, the substitute teacher, Sangua, pushed open the door and walked in from outside to the podium. However, as soon as he appeared in the classroom, the three kingdoms made such an unexpected statement. "Although this is something that rarely happens in our school, I still want to tell everyone that today, our class will welcome a transfer student." A transfer student? As expected, all the students in the class were stunned. A surpasser could only be found in 1,000 people, and it was someone who only had the adaptability of the daybreak star pattern, and might not be able to successfully implant the daybreak star pattern. Therefore, it was just as the three kingdoms had said, a student who turned into a surpasser halfway through their journey was a very rare occurrence. However, the person who walked in from outside the classroom not only made the stunned students come back to their senses, but they also all sucked in a breath of air. No matter if it was a boy or a girl, their eyes were all filled with amazement. The person who entered the classroom was like Julie, a foreign beauty who was obviously not a local. However, unlike Julie, the other party's appearance could not be described as cute. This was because the girl not only had a breathtaking and seductive figure, but the aura around her was also not as quiet and beautiful as Julie's. Instead, it was as if the spotlight was purposely focused on her body. Every part of her body exuded a strong sense of existence like a star. Both were foreign beauties. If Julie was the moon floating in the night sky, releasing soft silver frost, then this girl was the sun blooming with scorching light in the sky. Julie would unconsciously attract the attention of the surrounding people. On the other hand, this girl seemed to be attacking at any time and any place. Every move she made was attracting the attention of the surrounding people. What was even more amazing was that she also had a pair of ocean-like jade eyes. Furthermore, she had extremely bright golden hair that reached her waist. Sitting in the last row, Noah slowly straightened his back and looked at the girl. His eyebrows gradually raised. Under everyone's gaze, the girl walked into the classroom and came to the podium. She shook her bright-colored hair and at the same time, cast her gaze on Noah, who was sitting in the last row. Her face gradually revealed an extremely proud and confident smile. That smile was exactly the same as the one she left behind before disappearing in front of Noah last night. Yes. This so-called transfer student in front of him was the mysterious girl who had the Blaze rifle. Lilith Bristow. After saying such a name, the girl named Lilith put one hand on her waist and smiled sweetly. I transferred from a sister school in the United Kingdom. Although it's a bit rushed, I'll specially allow you to directly call my name. Whether it was the content or the tone, Lilith's words were full of arrogance. However, this kind of arrogance strangely didn't arouse the disgust of many people. Instead, it made people feel that it was natural. Therefore, Ivan, who was sitting in front of Noah, couldn't help but speak. What an incredible person. Hee hee. Lilith closed her eyes and smiled nonchalantly. I'll take it as a compliment. Saying so, the corner of Lilith's mouth curled up. With leisurely steps, she walked down from the podium. From the beginning to the end, Lilith's eyes were fixed on Noah. Then, under the stunned expression of the surrounding people, Lilith directly passed through every empty seat in the classroom and sat down in the last row. Just next to Noah. Ivan, Julie, Tachaba, and other people who were familiar with Noah looked at each other. Even Noah frowned. Although he had long expected this girl named Lilith to come for him, Noah didn't expect that the other party didn't have the slightest intention of avoiding him and directly approached him. This wasn't the most important thing. The most important thing was what Lilith said later. Teacher, 3 Kingdoms. Lilith's voice echoed. Can we continue? If you don't have any questions. 3 Kingdoms pushed his glasses and made such a statement. Noah, from today onwards, you and Lilith will form the tripping double blade, huh? The students were stunned at first, then they immediately exclaimed in surprise. Tripping. Tripping double blade? Ivan was a little overwhelmed. In other words, from today onwards, Noah will always live with Lilith? The ahog on Julie's head suddenly stood up, and even Tachaba and slightly opened their mouths. Teacher. Noah's frown became tighter and tighter. Isn't that a little inappropriate? Student Noah, it's because you don't have a partner who can form a tripping double blade that you've always been alone. However, the school's basic education policy is for 2 people to form a group. 3 Kingdoms indifferently said. There was no way in the past, but now there is finally one more student in the class. The rules also say that the school will arrange for those who don't officially form the tripping double blade, in the end to form the tripping double blade. This is the rule, you didn't forget it, right? As he said this, 3 Kingdoms looked at Lilith. Moreover, as a special student, Lilith also didn't object to this decision. Special? What is that? All the students were at a loss. Noah turned his gaze to Lilith, but found that she was also looking at him. This is fate. As if Lilith had caught her prey, her eyes bloomed with a strange look, and her smile was still confident. Let's get along well, as an exception and a special. Chapter 228. In the corridor of the dormitory, Noah, who was walking towards his own room, heaved a deep sigh under the piercing gaze of the people who had been staring at him from the stairs. Even if Noah didn't look back, he could guess that Ivanli, Julie, Tachibana, Enya, who came back with him, didn't return to their rooms immediately. Instead, they stayed at the stairs. Most likely, they won't leave before he enters his room. The reason is very simple. It's just that these girls seem to care more about Lilith, who is about to move in with him, than Noah himself. However, what can Noah do? The rule of the academy was that the students had to form the official tripping twin blades. If they couldn't form the tripping twin blades in the end, the academy would arrange for the rest of the students to form the tripping twin blades. Among the freshmen, because Noah was the only one left, he couldn't find a partner to form a tripping double blade, so he had no choice but to delay. Now, as soon as Lilith moved into the class, Noah, who has been single, naturally has to be with Lilith, who also doesn't have a tripping double blade. As for the difference between men and women, if the Academy can really consider this, Noah will be very happy. Unfortunately, it didn't. Having said that, since the establishment of the Academy, there was no example of men and women forming a tripping double blade until Noah came to this Academy. That is to say, from the beginning of temporarily forming a tripping double blade with Ivanley and Julie to now forming a formal tripping double blade with Lilith, as a person living with the opposite sex, Noah is the first person in the history of this Academy to eat crabs. I don't know if it's lucky or unfortunate. Enduring the sharp gazes that continued to attack him from behind, Noah sighed once again. He walked to the door of his room and extended his hand to push open the door. Until then, the gaze from behind disappeared. Vaguely, the footsteps of Ivanley, Julie, Tachibana, and Ya also sounded, which made Noah finally relax his expression a little. However, this relaxation couldn't last long. In the next second, when Noah walked into his room and closed the door, the scene that appeared in front of him instantly made Noah speechless. "Oh. You're back." The one who said this sentence was the tripping double blade, who should move into this room today and live with Noah. At this time, the girl named Lilith was sitting at a pure white round table. There was a tea set on the table with tea and snacks. Lilith held the cup in her hand and leisurely sipped on it. If Noah remembered correctly, although there was a small round table in his room, it was not only a small wooden table, but it was also so short that one could only sit on the floor. It was not like the table in front of Lilith that was as tall as an ordinary table. It looked very high-end and had chairs beside it. If that was the only change, it would be fine. However, the room in front of Noah was completely different from the room he saw before he went out in the morning. It was not an exaggeration to say that it was changed beyond recognition. The layout was still the same. However, the curtains, wardrobes, TV, bookshelves, and so on were all replaced with high-end items that could only be found in a luxury suite. Even the standard bunk bed was replaced with a large double bed with a sofa next to it. Everywhere was filled with the noble taste of a lady's room. Such a room, I believe that anyone who saw it would think that it was a luxury suite in a hotel, not a room in a school dormitory. And naturally, Lilith, who was sitting at a small white table in the middle of such a room, was a real missy. After all, beside Lilith, there was a girl wearing a butler's tuxedo, waiting for orders behind. Is that the butler? But the butler should generally be a man, right? Is he here to serve Lilith? Then he should be wearing a maid's uniform, right? Also, what's with this feeling of breaking into a rich person's house? Everything had too many factors that needed to be complained about, so with so many factors combined together, Noah didn't know what to say for a while. What's wrong? On the contrary, Lilith was puzzled by Noah's behavior. She tilted her head and looked around. Sure enough, even if the room is changed, the taste is still too low. It has nothing to do with taste. Noah didn't hide his boredom. After all, we are here at school. If you want to enjoy it, you might as well go home and enjoy it. Listening to Noah's sarcastic words, the butler girl standing behind Lilith immediately tightened her face and took a step forward. But when she was about to say something, Lilith stopped her. Noah is my roommate. He has the right to comment on this room, Sarah. Lilith said such words, but she didn't have a humble attitude at all. She was still so confident. Although I say so, this is also my interest. As a roommate, you should accommodate me specially. Is it specially again? Noah closed his eyes slightly as if he had given up. He stopped talking and walked into the room. He took off his uniform jacket, opened the wardrobe that had been replaced, and hung his clothes in it. It was worth mentioning that although the wardrobe was replaced, all the clothes that Noah originally put in the wardrobe were still there, and they were now hanging in the same position as they were in the morning. Sarah. After Noah hung the clothes in the wardrobe, Lilith said to herself, "Help my roommate make a cup of milk tea." Got it, Mississippi. The butler girl named Sarah bowed slightly, but at the moment when she bent down, she glared fiercely at Noah. Then, she made a cup of milk tea and placed it opposite Lilith. From beginning to end, Lilith didn't ask Noah if he wanted to drink tea. It was as if since she asked someone to make tea, then Noah must drink it. Not only did she do things her own way, but she was also very willful. If it were normal times, Noah might have ignored this young lady who did things her own way. Now, Noah still had something to ask Lilith, so he didn't mind accompanying her. At the moment, Noah sat directly opposite Lilith, glanced at Sarah, who was standing behind Lilith and still staring at him as if she had a blood feud with him. He supported his chin with his hand and said with disinterest, "If you are really a young lady, I find it hard to believe that you would choose to live under the same roof with a person of the opposite sex who you have only met a few times and barely talked to." Lilith's action of drinking tea paused slightly, and her green eyes looked straight at Noah. "Are you implying that I am too casual? Please interpret it as I see that you have another purpose." Noah also met Lilith's gaze, and his expression became quite meaningful. "Am I wrong? You call yourself a special young lady?" "It's not that I call myself that, I am special." Lilith smiled at Noah unhurriedly. "And you are also very special, aren't you? The exceptional student Noah? Let's stop beating around the bush, shall we?" Noah slowly put away his smile. "You should also tell me why you are targeting me, right?" Yesterday, Lilith had already secretly observed Noah once, and she also tested Noah once last night. Noah didn't care what Lilith meant by special, but the other party was obviously targeting him. Even the matter of forming a tripping double edge with Noah seemed to be secretly manipulated by her. Lilith was not targeting Noah? Who would believe that? As a man, you're too paranoid. Lilith was still leisurely drinking tea in response to Noah's inquiry, but she also cast a glance at Noah from the corner of her eyes. "However, if you must ask me if I have any purpose, my purpose is very simple. It is to form a tripping double edge with you, the exceptional." "Huh?" Noah suddenly made a puzzled sound. "Don't make me say it a second time." Lilith put down the teacup in her hand and raised her eyes slightly with strong confidence. "I came to form a tripping double edge with you." Chapter 229. Seeing the strong confidence in Lilith's green eyes, Noah understood. With the self-esteem of the girl named Lilith in front of him, she wouldn't beat around the bush or even be secretive about this kind of thing. That is to say, just like what Lilith herself said, she only had one purpose: to become a double-edged sword with Noah. Why? This question almost came out of Noah's mouth in the form of blurting out, "Why do you want to spend so much effort just to form a double-edged sword with me? Why?" Lilith, who heard Noah's question, was a little surprised. "Do you still need to ask this kind of thing? Of course, it's because we are the same kind, isn't it?" Hearing this, Noah was silent for a while and stared straight at Lilith's eyes. "Is it just because of this? Don't you understand?" Lilith was unusually calm, but there was a touch of excitement in her tone. The excitement of always thinking that only you are special, that only you are the only one, that only you have the unique blaze, but in the end, there is the same kind around you. Can't you understand? In other words, because you found out that you are not the only abnormal existence in this world, and you are not alone, but have the same kind, this feeling of almost getting rid of the loneliness, you feel happy? And this so-called abnormal existence should be referring to the fact that Lilith possessed a soul that theoretically should not have the blaze of the rifle. Our souls are all guns. There is no better evidence than this to prove that we are the same kind. Lilith smiled sweetly. That smile no longer had the confidence until just now, but it was particularly gentle. "So, the exception, you, and the special, me, our meeting and combination is fate." When saying this sentence, Lilith's voice was full of joy. Obviously, to be able to meet someone who has the same type of blaze as her, Lilith really felt happy from the bottom of her heart. But, if the one who possesses the unique blaze is the same kind, then the 9-layer penetrations should be the same, right? Compared to Lilith's fervent voice, Noah's voice was surprisingly calm. "Can't he be your double-edged sword? You're talking about that supernatural ability, right?" As expected, Lilith knew about the 9-layer penetrations. She supported her cheek with one hand and looked straight at Noah. Of course I'm happy about the fact that I have a kindred spirit, but there can only be one double-tripping blade. Therefore, compared to the shield of the 9 layers penetrating current, I prefer you who is a spear like me. After saying that, Lilith concluded with this sentence. After all, we have almost the same soul. The spacious room was suddenly filled with an indescribable silence. Noah was silent. He picked up the teacup filled with milk tea on the table and drank it. When the milk tea in the teacup was almost empty, Noah suddenly opened his mouth. The specific form of the blaze is different from person to person, right? Lilith was slightly surprised. Is there a problem? I just want to say that Ivan's blaze is at the katana, probably because he has always been learning kendo, so he is most familiar with swords and sabers. The 9-layer penetration's blaze is a shield, probably because he has a strong desire to protect something deep in his heart. Noah directly turned his gaze to Lilith. Then, Lilith, why would your blaze be a rifle? Is this what you want to ask? Lilith's pretty face relaxed little by little, as if she was immersed in some memories. After a while, she chuckled. I have liked hunting since I was a child. Hunting? Noah's face was full of surprise. Do you mean hunting? That's right, Lilith said as she gestured with her gun and made a shooting motion. For the structure of the gun used for hunting, I used to break it down and reorganize it again and again. I kept repeating this action until I completely mastered it. Now, even with my eyes closed, I can assemble a rifle. For me, the gun is a weapon that is more intimate than anything else, and it is also more familiar than anything else. Lilith spread her hands to Noah. Perhaps it is because of this that my blaze was able to materialize into a rifle, making me a unique existence. Now, Noah also understood. The dawn star pattern implanted in the body of the surpasser contained information about all weapons from ancient times to the present. Among them, it naturally included hot weapons and even other weapons that could be used as weapons. The reason why the blaze of the surpasser couldn't materialize into those hot weapons in the dawn star pattern was because their soul couldn't choose those weapons with complex structures. However, as mentioned earlier, a strong desire, a deep impression of experience, and other factors that could affect a person's mind, spirit, and even soul would cause the soul of the surpasser to choose the most suitable weapon from the weapon database of the Daybreak Star Tattoo to materialize. Although this was not an easy thing to do, if what Lilith said was true, and she was already familiar with guns to this extent, it was not impossible for her soul to choose the rifle under the influence of a strong desire, a deep impression of her experience, and other factors. It was not impossible that Lilith's soul would choose the rifle. After understanding this, Noah laughed, and his laugh was quite sarcastic. However, it was not directed at Lilith, but at Noah himself. No. Lilith. Noah said indifferently. We are not the same kind. What are you talking about? Lilith was stunned and then frowned. What do you mean we are not the same kind? Undoubtedly, our souls are all guns, right? That's why I said we are not the same kind. Noah closed his eyes. Even if our souls are in the form of guns, the color of our souls is not the same at all. Even if your soul turns into a gun, it is because you want to use the most familiar and most intimate gun to aim at animals, to aim at prey. Noah suddenly opened his eyes, and his voice was like a heavy hammer, hitting the deepest part of Lilith's heart. But, I am different. Different. Lilith looked at Noah in a daze, and a blank expression appeared on her face, then she froze. What's different? What's different? Noah said in a self-deprecating tone. The difference is that your gun's muzzle used to only aim at animals and take away their lives, but my gun's muzzle used to only aim at people and take away their lives. Lilith's beautiful face froze. Not to mention Lilith, even Sarah, who had been silent at the side, suddenly had her pupils shrink, and her face was shaken. People? Take away people's lives? Is this true? Do you understand? Noah stood up, looked at Lilith condescendingly, and said word by word. Your soul is still pure white, but my soul has long been stained with the bright red. Even if they are both guns, the weight of the two guns is not the same. So, Lilith. Noah turned around, as if deliberately not letting Lilith see his current expression. Please forgive me for not being able to agree with your so-called the same kind. Leaving this sentence, Noah did not say anything else, and walked towards the direction of the bed. I am tired, I will rest for a while. Lilith could only silently look at Noah lying on the bed, and for a long time, she did not return to her senses. Chapter 230. The conversation with Lilith made it easier for Noah to fall into a deep sleep today than usual. Of course, it was not because of the so-called theory of different colors of souls that covered Noah's heart with a layer of haze. Although Noah did kill someone once, Noah had never regretted what he did that time, nor did he have any psychological burden because of it. After all, those people really did deserve to die. However, Noah's thoughts were also true. He did not want Lilith to classify him as the same kind as himself. Although the young lady was a bit willful and overconfident, the happiness and joy she showed when she found out that she had the same unique blaze as herself was from the bottom of her heart. Under such circumstances, if Lilith knew that the reason why Noah's blaze was the same gun as her was not because of the same soul, but because the weapon that originally existed was spiritualized and merged into one's own soul before being born, how disappointed would she be? Therefore, from the beginning, Noah and Lilith were not the same kind. In that case, if Noah let Lilith treat him as the same kind as her and continue to feel happy, wouldn't it be equivalent to deceiving this young lady who really wanted to find a kind from the bottom of her heart? Under the influence of such thoughts, Noah also rejected Lilith's idea of kind. Of course, this was equivalent to pouring cold water on Lilith, but at least it was better than deceiving Lilith. Besides, Lilith also had a real kind. 9-layer penetrations. The 9-layer penetrations that had the same form as Lilith's blaze that should not have appeared was Lilith's kind in the true sense. In this way, even if he poured cold water on Lilith, in the case that there was still a kind, she would not be too disappointed, right? However, the matter of Noah pouring cold water on Lilith was also a fact. The reason why he fell asleep so quickly was not so much because he felt pressured, but because Noah wanted to give Lilith some space. Therefore, Lilith and Sarah in the room did not make a sound, and Noah himself urged himself to sleep, so Noah quickly fell into a deep sleep. In a daze, at a certain moment, Noah heard a murmur in his ear. What do you mean not kind? Don't you even sleep like an ordinary person? The murmur was like a layer of mist, slowly shrouding Noah's ears. No matter what, since I have decided to let you be my tripping blade, I will not make a second decision. This is also fate. As soon as this sentence fell, a rather hot temperature approached Noah. Okay, I'm going to sleep too. Immediately, the rustling noises began to reverberate, and the temperature near Noah stabilized. It seemed that the distance between them was no longer closing. However, even in his sleep, Noah could still feel the temperature, and he slept more soundly. The night passed quietly. In a half-asleep state, when his consciousness was still quite hazy, Noah suddenly felt an abnormal fullness and softness wrapping around him. Not only did it hug his neck tightly, but it also pressed its whole body on Noah's body. That feeling, to be honest, if he hugged it like this, it would be more comfortable than hugging a pillow, right? However, Noah slowly furrowed his brows in his sleep. Just because, Noah felt that his face seemed to be buried, and it made him feel suffocated. Even if there was no hostility, malice, or killing intent around him, Noah's vigilance was not as high as before, and could be regarded as an ordinary person. But if he couldn't breathe, no matter who it was, he wouldn't be able to sleep, unless he wanted to never wake up. Unfortunately, Noah was still able to wake up. So, under the urging of the suffocating feeling, Noah gradually opened his eyes. However, in the next second, the thing that entered Noah's vision made Noah's consciousness completely awake in an instant, and even crashed. What entered Noah's vision was white. Unusually white. White like a pearl. It was a color that only appeared on extremely elastic and perfectly maintained skin. In other words, the white that entered Noah's vision was all the color of skin. And the owner of this white skin directly hugged Noah tightly in her arms, so that Noah's face was tightly buried in the other party's arms, and he couldn't even breathe. Noah's eyes opened to the maximum in an instant, and he understood his current state. To sum it up in a simple and clear sentence, a girl hugged Noah tightly. Moreover, she was naked, like holding a baby, hugging Noah's head into her arms, and her smooth and tender body was all squeezed on Noah's body. Noah's first reaction, who understood the situation, was to take a breath of cold air. This breath seemed to have awakened the other party. Woo! A lazy voice came into Noah's ears. So itchy, this voice, like a bomb, was detonated in Noah's head. Noah, who was in a mess due to the explosion, bounced up with a miraculous speed that could surpass the leaped out, and instantly left the enviable white skin. Then, Noah saw it. He saw Lilith, who kicked away the thin sheet and was naked. Lilith seemed to be aware of the movement around her. She opened her half-closed eyes and subconsciously propped up her upper body. Suddenly, a very overwhelming and impactful posture was deeply imprinted in Noah's mind. In such a situation, Lilith, who was in a daze, spoke. Sarah? Is it dawn? No, 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 I'm not your strange butler. Noah's voice trembled. Why are you, in this state? What do you mean why? Lilith was still in a daze as she yawned cutely. I don't understand what you're talking about. It's just clothes. Clothes? Lilith seemed to be a little sober and said lazily. You know I can't sleep if I wear clothes, Sarah. I told you that I'm not that weird butler of yours. Noah finally regained his normal train of thought and quickly turned his head away. Anyway, you should put on your clothes first. Yes, Lilith responded in a daze, and immediately lowered her head. She lay down again and fell asleep. Lilith? After not getting a response for a long time, Noah could only glance in Lilith's direction. When he found that Lilith had fallen asleep again, he was suddenly speechless. If he took a closer look, although the sky was now bright, it was not to the extent of being completely bright. Even the students in the other dormitory should still be sleeping, right? Noah sighed secretly and tried not to look at Lilith. He picked up the quilt that Lilith kicked off and covered Lilith's body. Undoubtedly, you look so mature, but now you look like a child who needs to be taken care of. What's going on? With a wry smile on his face, Noah got up and got out of bed. After a simple wash, he took out his uniform from the closet, put on his clothes, and walked out of the room quietly. Gotcha. When the door was gently closed, Lilith, who was lying on the bed, opened one of her eyes and looked in the direction of the door, showing an expression of a successful prank. Sure enough, it's better to let you become my tripping blade. Needless to say, Lilith was completely pretending to be asleep just now. However, I didn't expect him to see me naked on the first day. I even covered myself with a quilt last night. Lilith pulled the quilt hard to cover her head, and a muffled voice came from it. Forget it, just treat it as a special benefit for you. After saying that, not long after, the rhythmic sound of breathing could be heard once again from under the sheets. Chapter 231. The school was exceptionally quiet in the early morning. Perhaps it was because Noah came out too early, but now, except for some students who were more diligent in the morning and came out for morning jogging or early practice, there was almost no one walking on the road. A weak wind blew from afar, causing the trees on both sides of the road to sway and make rustling sounds. Pink cherry blossoms danced in the wind, drawing beautiful arcs and falling to the ground. Such a scene was exceptionally pleasing to the eye. Because it was a bit early to go to the cafeteria, Noah randomly chose a road and took a walk in the school. Speaking of which, ever since he came to this school, Noah had not strolled in the school as seriously as he did today. If one did not look at the nature of Haolang School, this school was far superior to other schools in terms of both scale and level. From the map of Haolang School that Noah saw in the student handbook, this school not only had playgrounds, training grounds, and even gyms for people to exercise, but also several squares, parks, flower beds, and pavilions. For a school, such a scale was already very impressive. At least, Noah could guarantee that in this country, there should be no other school that could compare with Haolang School. It was believed that many people would choose to stroll around the school during their free time and enjoy the scenery of this luxurious school. When Noah came to the school on the first day, he was also amazed by the scenery here, but because of various things that happened later, Noah had not had a chance to seriously walk around the school. Today, because of Lilith, Noah got a chance. After removing the matter of Lilith from his mind, Noah leisurely strolled in the school with a pace that was relatively slow compared to the past. Around him, every once in a while, one or two students wearing gymnastic clothes and running in the school would occasionally pass by Noah. Some did not notice Noah, while some seemed to recognize Noah and ran past Noah while muttering something. From time to time, Noah would hear the word exception in the midst of these mutterings. From a certain point of view, this batch of first-year students was really easy to attract attention. Blaze, who owned a revolver, was known as the exception Noah. The Blaze, that possessed the shield, was also known as the 9 layers penetration of the ability. Julie had a doll-like appearance, but her strength was completely inversely proportional to her appearance. There was also the heir to the famous Tangerine 18 Arts, Tangerine Ba, who came from a martial arts family. Even Ivanli had become quite famous because of his outstanding appearance and outstanding swordsmanship. Ivanyo was said to be very popular among the boys. Of course, the reason why the latter was so popular with boys was not only because of her delicate appearance that made people want to protect her, but also because of her proud chest that couldn't be ignored. And everyone's popularity had been raised recently, becoming one of the few, level 2, surpassers, among the freshmen, and there was a tendency for it to rise even higher. In addition, Lilith, who had recently transferred over from her sister school in the UK, had the title of special, and seemed to have an extremely noble background. Her appearance didn't lose out to Julie's at all, and her figure even exceeded Julie's by more than a notch. This batch of freshmen indeed often became the center of conversation for others. Because of this, Noah could not help but mutter. "Isn't this a bit too eye-catching? If you're talking about yourself, then there's nothing I can do about it." Who knew that as soon as Noah's words fell, a voice responded immediately. "After all, now everyone knows that you and the super beautiful girl from England have formed an official, tripping double blade, and even lived together." Noah's footsteps stopped, the corner of his mouth twitched slightly, then he helplessly turned around and looked behind him. Ivan, in a gymnastic suit, seemed to have just gone through some intense exercise, and his body was sweating all over, standing behind Noah. His hands were crossed in front of his chest, highlighting a pair of perfectly round breasts. His eyes were half squinted on his pretty face, and he looked angry. "What's wrong? Noah? Why isn't your cohabiting beautiful transfer student by your side?" When he said this, although Ivan's tone sounded like he was making fun of Noah, a careful person would be able to hear a hint of bitterness. If it was normal, Noah might be able to hear the real meaning hidden in Ivan's words. But he didn't know if it was because of Lilith's stimulation in the morning. The moment he saw Ivan, Noah couldn't help but move his gaze down and cast it on Ivan's chest. It had to be said that even if Ivan was not as good as Ya, he was not inferior to Lilith. Noah had accidentally seen Ivan's naked body before. Inadvertently, Noah compared it with Lilith's naked body he saw in the morning, and he was surprised to find that in terms of shape, Ivan seemed to be more beautiful. Ivan, who didn't know that his body was compared to other girls by the only person of the opposite sex so far, looked at Noah's somewhat complicated and dull expression, and he was a little angry. "Noah, did you hear me talking to you?" "Huh?" Noah woke up and realized what he had just imagined. He couldn't help but scold himself in his heart, and immediately smiled embarrassedly. Ma, good morning." "Good morning." "What the hell?" Ivan stretched out his finger and poked Noah's forehead. He leaned forward, put his face in front of Noah, put his hands on his waist, and stared at Noah angrily. The Noah I know is not a guy who stares at other people's faces in a daze. "Tell me, who are you, and why are you pretending to be Noah?" What are you talking about? Noah smiled bitterly. Besides, I'm not staring at your face in a daze, I'm looking at your chest, Ivan suddenly froze. Chest. Noah fiercely swallowed back the word that almost jumped out of his mouth, and his face turned red, and he hurriedly changed the topic. Right. Right, Ivan, why are you so early today? I just came out to do morning exercises as usual. You know that I have a habit of doing morning exercises. Ivan was a little hesitant. And, I can't sleep very well. You can't sleep? Noah asked in confusion. What's wrong? Why can't you sleep? No. What? What? Ivan inexplicably said this sentence out of anger, stretched out his hand, and poked Noah's forehead again. You should go back and care about your cohabitant. After saying that, Ivan coldly snorted, turned around, and ran in another direction. What's going on? Noah touched his forehead, and could only helplessly chase after him. What did I do to make you angry? I said it's nothing. Ivan said, but his angry tone was not convincing at all. Shio. Just as Noah was about to say something, the sound of something tearing through the air rang out, causing Noah's expression to freeze. In the next moment, his entire body tensed up. Without the slightest hesitation, Noah suddenly turned around, raised his hand, clenched it into a fist, and fiercely smashed it behind him. Pung! In the next moment, a muffled sound came from behind Noah, and a violent ripple of energy spread out from the front of Noah's fist, swinging in all directions. Taking a closer look, in front of the fist that Noah had swung out, there was another slender and fair fist on top of it. Then, from the slender and white fist, a force was transmitted that shook Noah's body back, and after a few steps, he stabilized. This made Noah raise his head, and looked forward with an ugly face. There, a girl with long black hair was swinging her palm that just hit Noah's fist, and her face was full of arrogance, revealing a fierce smile. The girl was wearing a maid costume, and a pair of rabbit ears on her head. Ivan, who was aware of the movement behind him, quickly turned around, and when he saw the girl who attacked Noah, his face changed. Teacher Little Rabbit? Impressively, it was Moonsight Glass Rabbit. Chapter 232. W.H. Why? The sudden appearance of the Moonlight Glass Rabbit seemed to have a huge impact on Ivan, causing him to be unable to react for a moment. On the other hand, Noah didn't have the slightest doubt about Tsukuyomi's sudden appearance. He just slowly raised his face and looked straight ahead with his slightly cold eyes. Not a bad gaze, exception. Receiving Noah's cold gaze, Tsukuyomi didn't get angry at all. It was as if the matter of her being seriously injured by Noah didn't happen at all. She even licked the corner of her mouth excitedly. You're making me restless. I want to fight you again. Want to fight? Noah glanced at Ivan, who was still in a daze, and took a step forward to shield Ivan behind him. Then, he sneered at Moonlit Glass Bunny. You shouldn't have said that after you've finished fighting, right? Tsukuyomi-sensei. If I really want to fight, I will directly use Blaze. Tsukuyomi spread out her hands, the smile on her face was still a bit ruthless and fierce. I just heard that you've risen to grade 2, so I came to greet you. I'm happy from the bottom of my heart that you've become stronger, classmate Noah. While saying such a sentence, Tsukuyomi's face showed a very happy expression, proving that what she said was true. Although I really want to fight with you again, but unfortunately, if I fight with you here again, I will lose the job that I picked up. The job that you picked up? Ivan finally reacted. He stepped out from behind Noah, took a convenient attacking posture, and asked loudly. What do you mean by that? It was no wonder that Ivan's reaction was so intense. After all, last time when Tsukuyomi wanted to kill Noah and his group, she also used the excuse of job. Now that she used this excuse again, it was no wonder that Ivan was so vigilant. You want to know? Tsukuyomi raised her chin and grinned. It's very simple. My employer has changed to this school, and now I am a real teacher. What did you say? Ivan's eyes widened in shock. Could it be that the school plans to hire you to teach us? Ha 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 ha. Tsukuyomi held her stomach and laughed. Her laughter was full of sarcasm. That's right. That's what it is. How? How could this be? Ivan was a little panicked. This. How could such a ridiculous thing happen? Undoubtedly, the guy who called himself a teacher in front of him tried to kill his own student not long ago. In the end, not only did the school not punish him, but they also hired him to continue to be a teacher. How could such a thing not be absurd? Is it ridiculous? Yu Jianli too put her hands on her waist and shrugged her shoulders as if she was enjoying Ivanli's performance from the bottom of her heart. I say, Ponytail sister, how ridiculous is this school? Don't tell me you've only just realized it today? Ivan was speechless. Indeed. No matter how you look at it, the school will let the students fight in the entrance ceremony. The loser will be directly driven away. The daily training is more rigorous than the military, and even the school itself is using the students as lab rats for research. No matter how you look at it is ridiculous. Making the murderer, Yu Jianli Rabbit, pick up the pointer again. Compared to these matters, it was quite similar to the school council's decision. Only Noah, after hearing Tsukuyomi's words, the sarcastic expression on his face couldn't be concealed, which made Tsukuyomi raise her eyebrows and look at him with deep meaning. Oh, it seems that you know a lot of things, exception. Obviously, Tsukuyomi didn't think that Noah showed such an expression because of her perfunctory words. Noah must have known some inside information. In fact, Noah didn't know anything, but guessed something. Don't forget, Tsukuyomi is a surpasser, an existence that can only be created by the Dawn organization. How could the Dawn organization allow the individual who was responsible for their greatest research results to work for others and not control it in their own hands? Therefore, instead of letting Noah believe that Tsukuyomi sneaked into the Dawn organization, sneaked into this school, became a surpasser with great difficulty, and even became a surpasser teacher in the school, but in the end, exposed her identity in order to kill a few promising students, Noah is more willing to believe in his own guess. That is, Tsukuyomi's actions, in itself, were allowed by the school. That is to say, Tsukuyomi attacking Noah and the others, these students, were all instructed by the school's higher-ups. Otherwise, if Yu saw that the glass rabbit was a spy sent from somewhere else to infiltrate the school to assassinate promising students, she wouldn't have let her actions be so unscrupulous that day just to kill a few students. Unless, Tsukuyomi didn't care that her identity was exposed, causing her to be unable to eliminate the more promising students who enter the school in the future. Sure enough, you're not as easy to deal with as those naive brats. Tsukuyomi looked deeply at Noah and curled her lips. It's up to you whether you believe it or not. Wait until class later, you'll know whether it's true or not. I just came to tell you, don't make too much of a fuss in the classroom. The chairman's daughter probably won't let such a thing happen. After saying that, Tsukuyomi's temperament changed, the rabbit ears on her head shook, and she threw a coquettish glance at Noah, putting on a sweet and cute appearance as before. You too, don't be late for class. Leaving such a sentence, Tsukuyomi skipped away. That appearance, compared to the fierce and violent appearance just now, was simply a polar opposite. Noah. Ivanli was a little uneasy as he hugged Noah's arm. Don't worry, Noah, who watched Tsukuyomi leave, patted Ivanli's hand and said without turning his head. Don't care whether what she said is true or not. Looking at her appearance, she won't do anything for the time being. Let's just wait and see. Hearing this, Ivanli's expression relaxed slightly and nodded heavily. Together with Noah, they looked at Tsukuyomi's back that was gradually getting farther and farther away, and didn't say anything else. Just as Yu Jianli too had said, today, the substitute teacher, 3 Kingdoms, brought Yu Jianli too into the classroom and announced her return. Of course, other than Noah and Ivanli who already knew about this matter, Julie, Tachibana, Kyujuju Turyu, Kawai Tokasaki, and the others almost attacked Sukatsun Bunny in anger. However, 3 Kingdoms seemed to have specially come to the classroom for this moment. Julie and the others only had time to abruptly stand up, but before they could do anything, he stopped them and acted as if he didn't know anything, and let Tsukuyomi continue teaching. On the other hand, Yu Jianli too completely ignored Noah and the others, as if she had completely forgotten that she had tried to kill her own student. Just like before, she pretended to be cute while jumping back and forth happily. This made the people who knew Yu Jianli too's true colors gnash their teeth in hatred. After class, as soon as Tsukimi left the classroom, Tachiba, Kyujituryu, and Kue Inokazaki, who were sitting further away, all gathered around Noah's seat. After Ivanli's explanation, everyone finally understood what was going on, and immediately fell into a stifling silence. Tisk, Kue Inokazaki clenched her teeth. It really doesn't feel good to have someone who almost killed me by my side. Kyujituryu nodded heavily, and even Julie, Tachiba, and the others showed complicated expressions. Everyone, don't be afraid. At this time, it was Ivanli who revealed his cheerful voice and comforted everyone. Teacher Little Rabbit is no match for Noah, so she won't dare to act recklessly. Everyone was slightly stunned, and they all looked at Noah, who was at ease. Then, their tense faces relaxed. Needless to say, everyone agreed with Ivanli's words. Only Noah knew that if he really went against Tsukimi, it would definitely be more troublesome than the last time. Chapter 233. Everyone seemed to think that since Noah was able to defeat the Moonlit Glass Rabbit when he was still at level 1, now that he had reached level 2, the Moonlit Glass Rabbit could no longer be Noah's opponent. However, everyone did not know that even though he had reached level 2, it was still unknown whether Noah could defeat the Moonlit Glass Rabbit again. Originally, at that time, Noah's level 1 strength was definitely not a match for the Moonlit Glass Rabbit, who was at level V. At that time, the reason why Noah was able to defeat the Moonlit Glass Rabbit was entirely because he had a killing move like Annihilation Strike that could decide the outcome of the battle, and the leap forward that he had comprehended at the last minute to increase his speed. This was why he was able to kill the Moonlit Glass Rabbit by surprise. Now, the Moonlit Glass Rabbit had already seen the power of Noah's Annihilation Strike. Under the circumstances where it was on guard, it would definitely not choose to fight head-on with Noah like last time. In the end, it gave Noah the opportunity to use the killing move on itself. Therefore, if he were to fight with the Moonlit Glass Rabbit again, Noah could at most rely on leap forward to make himself invincible. If he wanted to defeat the Moonlit Glass Rabbit, it would not be as easy as last time. Of course, this was under the condition that Noah did not release his true strength. If Noah were to release all of the limited strength in his body, then dealing with the Moonlit Glass Rabbit would not be a problem at all. However, Noah had already decided that he would not release his strength for no reason unless it was necessary. This way, Noah would have more chances of encountering the same opportunity as when he comprehended leap forward. In other words, Noah wanted to suppress his strength so that he could have the opportunity to improve his skills and realm. Anyway, even if he did not release his strength, that strength would not disappear into thin air and would even grow on its own. Why not? Therefore, unless the people around him were to encounter a real crisis, even if he himself was in danger, Noah did not intend to release all of his strength unless it was absolutely desperate. However, it was still too early to say these words. At the moment, it was still uncertain whether the Moonlit Glass Rabbit would attack them. In the end, Noah concluded with this sentence. Become stronger. Once I'm strong enough that no one can threaten me, I won't have to worry about anything. The people around Noah were stunned. They looked at each other and nodded with determination. At this moment, a burst of powerful footsteps entered the ears of everyone in the classroom. At the door of the classroom, Lilith, whose color was slightly different from the other students in this school, strode into the classroom, exuding a confident and proud aura just like when she came to class yesterday. Under the gaze of everyone in the class, she walked into the classroom. It wasn't until she almost reached her seat, which was beside Noah, that Lilith realized that the place was full of people. She blinked her eyes in surprise. Why are you all gathered here? Everyone looked at each other in dismay. After a while, they all revealed nonchalant expressions. No, it's nothing. Orange Bar nodded politely at Lilith and then held Ya's hand, whose eyes were moving back and forth between Noah and Lilith. Then, we'll go back to our seats first. After that, Orange Bar left with ya, who kept looking back. Then, we'll go back to our seats too. Kujuryu Totaru said. Just as he was about to leave with Kujisaki Totaru, Lilith's beautiful eyes stared at him with a look of interest. You're that Esper ability, right? Jojue didn't seem to expect Lilith to suddenly call out to him. After he reacted, he nodded. Yes, I'm Jojue. Hee hee. Lilith glanced at Ninefold Totaru, then smiled sweetly. I'm quite interested in you. Huh? Jojue was stunned. What did you say? Don't make me say it again. Lilith stopped smiling and shrugged. But unfortunately, my double-tripping blade has decided to be Noah. Jojue, I hope that if there's a chance in the future, let me see your soul. Lilith didn't give Nine Stacks Totaru a chance to reply and just sat down. She looked as though Nine Stacks Totaru would definitely find a chance to show off his blaze in front of her and let everyone see this beautiful girl's willful side. Jojue could only leave with Oki, who was in a bad mood, and returned to his seat with a baffled expression. Sorry to keep you waiting. Only then did Lilith turn her gaze to Noah with an unchanging confident smile on her face. It took me a bit of time to get up. Hearing Lilith's words, Noah couldn't help but remember the scene when he woke up. He looked away awkwardly, which made Lilith reveal a sly expression. Listening to Lilith saying that they were like family to Noah, Ivanli, who had the same daily routine as Noah not long ago, was slightly agitated. Julie's ahogue on her head also shook as if she was a little shaken. That said, you didn't just take a bit of time, right? Ivanli tried to cheer up, his voice was obviously cheerful. The teacher just finished the first class, you're seriously late. Is that so? Lilith responded to Ivanli's words casually. If it wasn't because Noah is here, I wouldn't want to come at all. You don't want to come? Ivanli was stunned. Is this okay? I've already finished the high school curriculum. Lilith glanced at Ivanli. Moreover, even if I don't come, it won't affect anything. I'm special. Is that so? Even the talkative and amiable Ivanli didn't know what to say at this time. He could only look at Noah for help. According to what you said, I don't seem to have to come to class, right? Noah, who received Ivanli's pleading gaze, could only sigh secretly and suddenly speak. I've even finished all the courses in university. Finished the university curriculum? Ivanli, who received Noah's support, was stunned. Even Julie was stunned for a moment. This time, it was Lilith's turn to show a stunned expression to Noah. However, Noah didn't lie. Still in the world of The Dark Bullet, when Fairy Tale was just established, Fairy Tale didn't have the ability to invite teachers to teach the cursed child. In order to teach those children knowledge, Noah crazily absorbed the content of books for a period of time and wanted to teach the cursed child himself. As a result, unknowingly, relying on his extraordinary memory and understanding, he completed the university curriculum. Therefore, for Noah, the high school curriculum was basically not difficult. It seems that you're not lying. After regaining her senses, Lilith looked straight into Noah's eyes. The next moment, with a calm expression, she uttered this sentence without stopping until it shocked him to death. You're really worthy of being the tripping double blade who shared the same bed with me. The air suddenly froze. Lilith. Noah was caught off guard. Shared the same bed? Ivanli's mouth twitched, and he showed an extremely reluctant smile. So that's how it is, you have already shared the same bed? Julie's reaction was even more intense. Noah. Julie's dark red eyes also fluctuated. Have you shared the same bed with her? Julie? Looking at Julie, who was emitting a terrifying pressure, Noah asked carefully. Are you angry? Julie didn't answer, but looked straight at Lilith, and then made such a declaration. Even if you are Noah's tripping double blade, I won't give you the opportunity to share the same bed with Noah. Lilith raised her eyebrows and slowly showed an interested expression. Are you declaring your sovereignty to me? Julie stood up, came to the other side of Noah, and directly hugged Noah's arm. I won't give Noah to you. Huh? Lilith narrowed her eyes. Interesting. Suddenly, extremely intense sparks burst out in the eyes of the two, making Noah's head hurt. Chapter 234. Today's class was particularly lively. Not for other reasons, but because throughout the whole day, whether it was teaching ordinary high school courses, strengthening physical fitness outside, or carrying out combat training courses, Julie and Lilith stuck to Noah's side for the whole day. They didn't let Noah out of their sight for a moment. It was understandable that Lilith stuck to Noah's side all the time. After all, as a double-edged sword, the school supported students to establish a good relationship with their partners. Even the dormitory and seats were arranged according to the double-edged sword unit. Inseparable double-edged sword could be seen everywhere. But in this way, the matter of Julie sticking to Noah's side was worth pondering. Because Julie and Lilith constantly engaged in various verbal confrontations today and kept rubbing against Noah's side, it didn't take long for the real purpose of their actions to spread like wildfire. In order to compete for Noah. That was the purpose of Julie and Lilith. As the saying goes, good things don't go out, bad things spread for thousands of miles. At the age where they liked to gossip, the matter of Julie and Lilith competing for Noah almost spread throughout the school in less than a day, making everyone pay attention to Noah when they saw Noah. Of course, among the students who paid attention to Noah, the girls were just curious and gossipy, but the boys were envious and jealous. Whether it was Julie or Lilith, both of them were not only foreign girls, but also beautiful girls whose appearance was enough to make people stunned. The two girls, one was the quiet moon, and the other was the passionate sun. It was not an exaggeration to say that they were the two most beautiful flowers in the whole school. However, with these two extremely beautiful girls surrounding a boy and starting a battle, which boy wouldn't be envious and jealous? Not to mention the boys, even some girls felt jealous of Noah. If it wasn't for the fact that Noah defeated a rank 3 teacher with the strength of an ordinary person at the entrance ceremony, I'm afraid that today, there would definitely be a lot of trouble to find Noah and teach Noah a lesson. However, Noah could only say that he was innocent. Why did such a situation happen? It wasn't that Noah didn't understand. To some extent, Julie had always regarded Noah as the closest person. The reason was also very simple. It was because Noah gave Julie the feeling of Julie's father. For this reason, Julie felt happy from the bottom of her heart for Noah's doting behavior. She often did all kinds of intimate actions to Noah, as if Noah was the closest family member. Among these intimate actions, Julie's favorite was to sleep with Noah. Because not only could this let Julie feel that she had found her father, but it could also eliminate the uneasiness in Julie's heart that had always been afraid of loneliness and bring Julie a sense of security. For Julie, sleeping with Noah might be the happiest thing in this school. Now, the appearance of Lilith took away the right to sleep with Noah. Julie, who inexplicably had a subtle sense of crisis in her heart, overreacted and confronted Lilith. She even did something that was equivalent to declaring sovereignty. As for Lilith, the reason why she confronted Julie was even simpler. Because it was interesting. This willful miss seemed to think that the interaction with Julie was more interesting than the boring class, so she kept playing with Julie. Among them, it was naturally because Noah was Lilith's tripping double blade. This willful miss was more or less possessive. In this way, Julie and Lilith were against each other for the whole day today. It was fine during the ordinary class, but when it came to the training class, the two girls were all kinds of comparisons and tit-for-tat. They kept sticking to Noah's side, making Noah really want to say that it was tiring. But this was not the most tiring part. The most tiring part was that because Julie had been sticking to Noah's side, Ivan, as Julie's tripping double blade, could only follow behind Noah. However, he had been looking at Noah with all kinds of cold eyes, fake smiles, and even explicit cold snorts, making Noah feel a lot of pressure. Moreover, for some reason, both Orange Bar and Ye kept a great distance from Noah. Even if they happened to get close to him, they would keep a respectful distance from him, as if they were afraid of being infected by some virus or coming into contact with something dirty. If this was not lively, what was lively? At least, for Noah, today was already lively to the point where it couldn't be more lively. In the end, Noah's patience also reached the limit. Almost all the classes today were announced to be over. Noah didn't even say a word and directly left the classroom, walking in the direction of the dormitory. Originally, Noah thought that if he returned to the dormitory, he could more or less get some relaxation. Unfortunately, even if it was this opportunity to relax, God seemed to be deliberately against Noah, not giving it to Noah no matter what. Sitting on the edge of the small white table in the center of the room, Noah felt like he was sitting on pins and needles. Stare dash. The young girl, Sarah, who was dressed in a housekeeper's uniform, was diligently ironing her master's clothes with an iron. However, her eyes were fixed on Noah and did not move away for even a moment. No. Rather than saying that she was staring at Noah, it was better to say that she was glaring fiercely at Noah. That look of deep hatred was just short of directly burning Noah's nose with the iron in her hand until it was as flat as his face. Noah, who endured Sarah's gaze that was as if she wanted to poke 2 holes in his body for half an hour, not only did he not get the relaxation time he hoped to get before returning, but he also felt that his spirit was more seriously exhausted, and he was so tired that he sighed again and again. It was worth mentioning that even though Sarah had been glaring at Noah, she still completed every task perfectly without making any mistakes. Noah, who was in a bad mood, couldn't find a chance to make things difficult for her. If you have any dissatisfaction with me, please say it directly, okay? Noah, who couldn't bear it anymore, could only meet Sarah's fierce gaze and speak with an unhappy tone. Or is it that as Lilith's housekeeper, you are best at arousing the disgust of others and making your master lose face? Sarah's expression became sinister in an instant. This was exactly what Noah wanted to see. As long as this strange housekeeper was angry at him, Noah had hundreds of ways to make the other party mad and vent his anger. However, Sarah only showed a sinister expression, but she was not provoked by Noah at all. She still remained silent without any change. Of course, if Sarah's eyes becoming fiercer was a change, then this change was definitely huge. Noah only felt that he was really unlucky today. It was fine that he was physically and mentally exhausted from being tormented by Julie, Lilith, Ivanli, and others outside, but he still had to suffer when he returned to his room. Could it be that the moonlight glass rabbit was too arrogant this morning, and even the world couldn't stand it anymore, so it summoned Noah's punishment? If this goes on, when Lilith comes back, I won't have time to rest. At that moment, Noah rolled his eyes, made up his mind, and simply stood up. Sarah, who thought that Noah wanted to leave, showed a moment of relief, but in the next moment, Sarah's whole face froze. Because Noah, who stood up, began to take off his clothes directly. Took off his coat. Took off his shirt. Took off his pants. When there was only a pair of shorts left, Noah put his hand on his shorts and made a pulling action. What are you doing? Sarah finally couldn't stay silent any longer. She almost screamed at Noah. You shameless bastard. Young Miss liking you is the biggest stain in your life. What are you talking about? Noah finally seized the opportunity to take revenge and used all his sarcasm. This is my room, isn't it normal for me to change clothes in my own room? If you want to change clothes, change in the changing room. Sarah clenched her teeth and squeezed out a voice. It was as if she wanted to tear Noah into pieces, but what she got in return was a light sentence from Noah. Then, are you sure there are no undergarments that Lilith threw around in the changing room? Sarah's breath was stuck in her chest. Chapter 235. Lilith was an out-and-out young lady. Even if he only knew Lilith for less than 2 days, even if it was a guess, Noah could guess that Lilith, who liked to be naked even when sleeping, would never specially pack her underwear when changing clothes. As a result, the clothes that Lilith changed yesterday were either cleaned up by Sarah yesterday, or they were still piled up in the dressing room, waiting for Sarah to clean them up. Looking at Sarah's frozen expression, there was no doubt that it was the latter. Noah's mouth slightly raised, and he muttered without a trace. But you're right. Even if it's in your own room, you still have to go to the dressing room when you change clothes. With that said, Noah also lifted his feet and walked in the direction of the dressing room. Sarah was suddenly shocked. She didn't even have time to put down the iron in her hand and rushed in the direction of Noah aggressively. Wait! Hearing Sarah's cry, Noah turned his head directly, and then he was shocked by Sarah's posture of rushing over with the iron in her hand. Ah! At the same time, Sarah suddenly staggered and exclaimed. The iron in her hand flew directly into the air, and she fell forward. Noah, who had not expected Sarah to pounce on him, was hit by Sarah, who could not stop in time and fell toward him. Bang dash. He didn't know whether it was the sound of head hitting head or the sound of body hitting body. Paw dash. With a crisp sound, Noah and Sarah rolled into a ball. They rolled on the floor of the room twice before coming to a stop. In the standard position of a woman on top and a man on the bottom. At this moment, the door of the room was neatly opened. Humph, Noah, I know you are here. It's not good to hide in the dormitory. Before the word "Duan" could be uttered, Lilith, who had walked into the room in a very valiant manner, could no longer speak. Perhaps, from the perspective of a third party, one would be able to see what was happening in the room. Because Sarah directly rushed in the direction of Noah, the clothes that belonged to Lilith that Sarah had been ironing were inadvertently shaken off. Together with the clothes that Noah took off in order to trick Sarah, they were scattered all over the floor. In the middle of the room full of clothes, Sarah rode on top of Noah, who was only wearing a pair of shorts. Her face was still full of aggression and bared her fangs and brandished her claws. On the other hand, Noah clutched his chest with a pained expression on his face. It was like Sarah wanted to do something to Noah forcibly and took off Noah's clothes. Sarah was stunned. Even Lilith, who had always been confident and proud, was in a mess at this moment. Her beautiful face had an expression as if she had been greatly shocked. I didn't expect that Sarah, who was so loyal and overprotective to me, would actually do something to my tripping double blade. Lilith seemed to be struggling with something. After a while, as if she wanted to escape, Lilith left the room and closed the door. Noah and Sarah maintained the position of the woman on top and the man on the bottom, staring at each other blankly. After a long time, in the room, the voice of a man and a woman sounded at the same time. It's not like that. After a while, Lilith returned to the room and sat down at her fixed seat at the small white table, drinking a cup of milk tea as if to suppress her shock. So it was just an accident? That's for sure. Miss. Although Sarah was not as agitated as before, her voice was obviously much higher than usual. Obviously, she was quite uneasy in her heart. She even glared at Noah with angry eyes. How could I do something to such a man? Such a man? Lilith blinked. From my point of view, as a man, Noah is quite outstanding. What's wrong with him? Of course. Sarah said without hesitation. This is a person with bad intentions who tried to do something to Mississippi Miss. Please don't fall into his trap. Hearing this, Noah, who had been acting as a listener and listening to the conversation between Lilith and Sarah out of boredom, was enlightened. Could it be that the reason why this housekeeper girl, who had been inexplicably hostile to him since the first time they met, had such a bad attitude towards him, was because of Lilith? Was it because the mistress she served had unexpectedly fallen in love with someone else, and it was a man at that, and as a result, this strange housekeeper had developed hostility towards her? Noah, who understood this, was speechless. Sarah. Lilith seemed to be somewhat helpless. Don't say it as if Noah deliberately approached me. Undoubtedly, the one who deliberately approached him is me. Even so, I think Miss shouldn't take it lightly. Unlike yesterday, Sarah was unexpectedly full of aggression today, as if she had been holding back these words for a long time. The first Miss is the daughter of the Bristol family. With this identity, many people will approach the first Miss with false feelings. Sarah, do you think I can't tell who's trying to get close to me with false intentions? Lilith sighed. In the end, Sarah, it's all because you're overprotective. This is also for the sake of the young mistress. Sarah replied righteously. Noah, who had been watching Lilith and Sarah argue for a long time without coming to a conclusion, rubbed his eyebrows and interrupted. The so-called Bristol family is referring to your family, right? You don't know? Lilith was startled, and then smiled slightly. That's right. Although the Bristol family is very famous in England, not many people in this country know about it. Lilith said as she leaned forward and showed Noah a confident smile. My family is quite famous in England, and my grandfather is the top manager of the company. Is that so? Noah nodded indifferently. Looks like you're really a daughter of a rich family. Is that all? Lilith supported her chin with her hand and stared at Noah. The Bristol Company is one of the investors of the Dawn Organization. The investor of the Dawn Organization? This time, Noah was surprised, but at the same time, he finally understood Lilith's identity. Needless to say, the founder of Howling Academy was the Dawn Organization. As the investor of the Dawn Organization, the daughter of the Bristol Company, Lilith was also equivalent to a shareholder of the Academy and the organization. In other words, Lilith not only had the unique blaze, but also had an identity that was directly related to the overall interests of the Dawn Organization. Therefore, Lilith was given the title of special. Therefore, Lilith could openly skip classes and use the phrase, I am special, as a response to skipping classes and exercising other privileges in the academy. Then, since you asked me a question, it's my turn to ask you a question. Looking at Noah's relieved expression, Lilith withdrew her smile bit by bit. Her green eyes rippled as a serious expression appeared on her face. You said that you once took someone's life, is that true? The atmosphere suddenly changed. It became a little heavy. Noah met Lilith's gaze. Looking at Lilith's rare serious expression, he said indifferently, Don't worry. What are you going to do after knowing? Are you going to stay away from a dangerous person like me? Whether you are a dangerous person or not, it's up to me, your roommate, to judge, Lilith replied, not to be outdone, and her eyes were fixed on Noah from beginning to end. Or do you think you are a dangerous person? You're right, it's up to you to judge whether I am a dangerous person or not, Noah said calmly and glanced at Lilith. I can only tell you that I have never regretted doing that. Noah drank all the milk and tea in front of him and stood up. I'm going to eat first. After that, Noah turned around and walked out of the room. Looking in the direction of the door, Lilith's eyes flickered, and after a while, the corner of her mouth slowly curled up. A man full of secrets will really make people want to dig them all out. Chapter 236. Sigh. As soon as he walked out of the dormitory, Noah raised his head, looked at the sky, and sighed. Double tripping blade. Eat together. Live together. Sleep together. Play together. Bear all the difficulties and suffering together. This is the double tripping blade in the school. Noah heard that the reason why the school adopted this system of two people as a unit to study together was because when they successfully graduated from this school and entered the Dawn Organization's way in unit to work, there, they would also be in two people as a unit to carry out missions. Therefore, in order to adapt to this kind of task execution mode in advance, the school adopted this double tripping blade system in an attempt to cultivate the students' sense of teamwork and cooperation, so that they can perform tasks more smoothly in the future. Just from the fact that they ate together, lived together, slept together, played together, endured all the difficulties and hardships together, and also studied together, Noah, Julie, and Ivanly formed a temporary, tripping double blade that was quite interesting. However, once he and Lilith formed a formal, double tripping blade system, this kind of atmosphere was gone. Of course, they were still living and sleeping together. However, Lilith, who liked to enjoy the treatment of a young mistress, or rather, who was used to being treated as a young mistress, usually had Sarah prepare the meals and bring them back to the dormitory to eat. Originally, Lilith also asked Sarah to help Noah prepare 3 meals, but that was rejected by Noah, who didn't like to be unique. In addition, because Lilith had finished her high school courses, and because of her self-willed and special relationship, Lilith would not choose to participate in ordinary classes at all. As a result, Noah and Lilith's tripping double-edged sword relationship gave people a feeling that they were neither close nor distant. But that's not surprising. After all, Lilith and Noah formed a double tripping blade system because Noah's blaze was the same type as her blaze. Apart from that, for a strange man whom she had just met for less than 2 days, at least for now, Lilith didn't have the thought of sharing hardships with him, so she wasn't inseparable from him like a double-edged sword. Noah didn't have any objections to this. The rest of the class had basically experienced the temporary double blade tripping and the official double blade tripping for a total of 2 weeks. They had also fought together in that new blade battle, so they had already developed a sense of camaraderie. Lilith, on the other hand, had only transferred to this school yesterday. It had been less than 2 days since she had formed a relationship with Noah. Therefore, there was nothing that could be done about it. It could only be said that Lilith's personal reasons only accounted for a small part, and the rest were objective reasons. I have to think of a way to cultivate tacit understanding and trust with Lilith. Noah couldn't help but say this. He was stunned for a moment and laughed bitterly. Since when did I consider Lilith as a real, double-edged sword? The reason why Lilith and Noah formed the tripping twin blades was because Noah had the same type of blaze as Lilith, so Lilith thought that they were the same kind. But only Noah knew that he couldn't be regarded as Lilith's same kind at all. Therefore, after knowing Lilith's purpose of finding him, Noah was ready to remove the double-edged sword relationship with Lilith at any time. He didn't even think about maintaining the double-edged sword relationship between them. In this way, why should he consider the issue of tacit understanding and trust? At the moment, Noah shook his head and threw the irritated feeling out of his mind. Don't think about it, just let nature take its course. With that said, Noah was just about to walk to the cafeteria, but the next moment, he suddenly stopped without any warning. Under the effect of Noah's sensing ability, an aura just came down from the dormitory behind Noah. He didn't walk down from the gate in a dignified manner. Instead, it slowly slid down along the wall from the top floor as if it had just lurked in the dormitory. It was as if they were lying in ambush for something. Noah suddenly turned his head and looked in the direction of the dormitory. Whoosh! Almost at the same time, the other party seemed to have noticed that he had been discovered. He jumped up without hesitation, and after a few ups and downs, he immediately flew outside. Unfortunately, what the other party did was equivalent to telling Noah. He was a person who couldn't be exposed. Bang! Noah turned around, and without even thinking about it, he suddenly stomped on the ground. At the same time, the stone slabs on the ground cracked, and his figure burst out and chased in the direction of the lurker. It was almost dusk now, so the visibility had decreased a lot. However, even with the effect of vision, Noah and the lurker's speed was still extremely fast. They nimbly crossed obstacles one by one and started a chase. The speed of the two clearly exceeded the human limit. This made Noah a little surprised. Could it be that the other party was also a surpasser? Noah narrowed his eyes, and when his body landed on a tree, he suddenly exerted force on his feet and increased his speed to another level, closing the distance between him and the other party. The sound of an attack from behind made the lurker turn around, and a pair of murderous eyes were exposed in the air. Immediately, the lurker's right hand suddenly swung back and pulled out a weapon. It was a gun. A submachine gun. Noah's figure suddenly stopped. Da-da-da-da-da. At the same time, the lurker did not hesitate to pull the trigger of the submachine gun in his hand. It was as if he wanted to overlap all the gunshots, and the bullets formed a barrage that enveloped Noah like a storm. However, before that, Noah, who had stopped moving, raised his right hand, as if he wanted to use it as a club, and swung it wildly to the side. There was a tree there. Bang! The arm that was swung out heavily hit the tree on the side. Wood chips flew up, and the tree immediately snapped and fell in Noah's direction. And it just so happened that the fallen trees completely covered Noah's figure. Bang 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 bang. The next moment, accompanied by a muffled sound of something exploding, the bullets of the submachine gun shrouding Noah all landed on the trees. Amidst the muffled sounds, the bullets kept leaving holes on the fallen trees. As for the lurker, not only did he not slow down for a moment because of the shooting at Noah, but he also used the recoil of the submachine gun to rush out a distance, pulling the distance between him and Noah far apart. "You have some skills." Noah, who jumped from behind the tree and landed in front of the fallen tree, stared at the blurred figure that was getting farther and farther away. He sneered, then raised his right foot and stomped heavily on the ground. Bang! The incomparably firm ground was actually shattered by Noah's stomp, as if it had exploded. Gravel splashed up. Noah didn't even look at it. He stretched out his hand and grabbed a piece of gravel in his hand. His body suddenly turned, and his arms suddenly swung forward. Whoosh! The gravel that burst out suddenly cut through the air. Although the speed was not as fast as a real bullet, the sound was sharper than the sound of the bullet breaking through the air just now. It was like a meteor shuttling through, flying toward the lurker with incomparable precision. When the lurker heard the sound from behind, he thought it was a sniper bullet. His body burst out with agility that was absolutely beyond the level of ordinary humans. His running body suddenly dislocated and tilted slightly. With his right foot as a fulcrum, he turned sideways in an incredible arc. At the same time, his body was lowered. Whoosh! The gravel that burst out whistled past the lurker's side, just brushing past the lurker's face and flying backward. Because of this, the lurker just happened to see the object flying toward him at the moment when the gravel flew past him. When he realized that it was just a piece of gravel, there was an obvious look of astonishment in his eyes, and there was a brief pause in his body. Whoosh! The sound of the second gravel cutting through the air sounded. Chapter 237. Bang dash. Following the first piece of rubble, the second piece of rubble hit the lurker's right shoulder. Goo dash. As the gravel shattered, the lurker also let out a muffled groan. The body that was already doing difficult movements suddenly lost its balance, fell to the ground, and rolled a distance of 3 to 4 meters. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Noah rushed out and came in front of the lurker that was still rolling on the ground. When Noah saw the lurker's full appearance, even he couldn't help but be stunned. It was because the other party was completely different from what Noah had imagined. Not only could he not see the face clearly, but he also couldn't tell the specific age. He couldn't even tell whether the person was a man or a woman. The lurker that was rolling on the ground was more than 1.8 meters tall, but its body was wearing a combat suit that looked like a mechanical armor. There was also a helmet on its head. It was just like a robot, and Soren couldn't tell its specific identity at all. However, Noah soon came to the conclusion that the other party was a man. Stinky brat. From within the thick helmet, a male voice that was clearly filled with anger rang out. Immediately afterward, the lurker that was wearing an armor-like combat suit rolled on the ground, stood up, and held the submachine gun in its hand toward Noah. Unfortunately, Noah also reacted from the shock. After seeing the lurker's action, his eyes turned cold. Paw dash. The submachine gun that was just held up by the lurker was instantly swatted away by Noah's hand like swatting a fly. Swoosh. However, at this moment, the lurker's other hand also touched its waist, and it actually took out a cold dagger. It suddenly stood up, and the dagger in its hand drew a cold silver light. Like the fangs of a beast, it fiercely cut toward Noah's chest. Facing the merciless attack from the lurker, Noah hurriedly tapped the ground with the tip of his foot and shifted his body backward by a step. A sound like the sound of something being cut rang out. Pieces of cloth also splashed out. Noah, who took a step back with the fastest speed, was still narrowly grazed by the sharp dagger on his chest. Although he wasn't injured, the uniform on his body was cut by the dagger. If the dagger in the lurker's hand was 5 millimeters longer, this crack that appeared on the uniform would also appear on Noah's chest. Moreover, it was accompanied by a large amount of bright red liquid. Obviously, the opponent wanted to kill Noah directly. Whether it was the previous unscrupulous continuous shots of the submachine gun or this attack, they were all used with the purpose of directly killing Noah. This made Noah's heart finally burst with anger. If people don't offend me, I won't offend them. If people offend me, I'll give them a taste of their own medicine. This had always been Noah's most basic action. Since the other party had no intention of showing mercy, then there was no need for Noah to show any mercy. Pung! At that moment, Noah stomped hard on the ground with his right foot, stabilizing his body that was still retreating. His right hand reached out at lightning speed, grabbing the lurker's wrist with great precision and twisting it hard. Kacha! A hair-raising sound was heard from the lurker's wrist. Ah! The lurker's scream came from the heavy helmet as his arm was twisted in a direction that normal people couldn't twist at all. Wang! At the same time, Noah's other hand was pulled straight behind his back. His clenched fist suddenly shook, and the space around his fist suddenly fluctuated with a burst of gorgeous light spots. They gathered on Noah's fist and instantly condensed into a bright vortex airflow, wrapping Noah's fist in it. In the next second, the fist that was wrapped in a dazzling vortex of airflow was like a beam of light that flashed in space. As Noah swung his fist, it brought along a sharp sonic boom and landed on the lurker's chest. Dong! A muffled thunder-like sound resounded, stirring up bursts of wind, blowing in all directions. Pung! The armored battle suit on the lurker's chest exploded in a moment, exploding into fragments that filled the sky. Shio! Under the terrifying power of Annihilation Strike, the lurker's body that was left with only a tattered battle suit flew out like a kite with a broken string, rubbing against the atmosphere. He flew out and hit a rock wall not far away. His body was embedded in the rock wall. Poochie! Unsurprisingly, the lurker spat out a mouthful of blood, then his head tilted and he fainted. Looking at the lurker who was embedded in the rock wall and a cross like Jesus, Noah exhaled a breath and withdrew his fist that was gradually dimming. He glanced at the torn uniform on his chest, frowned, and then walked in the direction of the lurker. Is he still alive? Arriving in front of the unconscious lurker, Noah quickly heard the extremely weak breathing sound from under the opponent's helmet. His frown became tighter and tighter. Although Noah wanted to use Annihilation Strike as quickly as possible, he did not charge it to the peak, but it still had 60 to 70% of the power of a rank 2 full-strength attack. If such a punch landed on a surpasser, unless the opponent was a rank 4, they would definitely die. Judging from the strength of this infiltrator, the other party had yet to reach the level of a grade 4, at most a grade 3. To be able to survive a Annihilation Strike, with 60% to 70% of its power, the infiltrator's defense was definitely above that of a grade 3. Immediately, Noah's gaze fell on the opponent's tattered, mechanical armor-like battle suit. Is it because of this? After pondering for a while, Noah reached out his hand, wanting to check the opponent's battle suit and see the opponent's true appearance. But at this moment, a somewhat nasty voice sounded. Oh, it's better to leave it to me, exception. Noah's hand paused, his originally tightly knitted eyebrows twisted like a rag when he heard this voice. He raised his head and looked at the cliff in front of him. Over there, the young girl, who was dressed like a bunny girl and a pretty maid, crossed her arms in front of her chest. She stood on the rock wall with a posture that showed she did not care that the scenery under her skirt had already been exposed. She looked down at Noah with a mischievous smile on her face. Still as unscrupulous as always, exception, don't you know how to be merciful? I've already been merciful. Noah retracted his hand, glanced at the girl standing on the cliff, and immediately turned his gaze to the unconscious lurker in front of him. Could it be that he's someone you know? Tsukujiri-sensei. Although I don't know if this rat knows me, I definitely know him. Tsukujiri Bunny smiled, but there was no smile in her eyes. It should be said that I know the person behind him. With that said, Tsukujiri Bunny jumped down. Tsukujiri Bunny roughly grabbed the head of the lurker embedded in the cliff, and pursed her lips. Is it really steel? Steel? Noah, who clearly heard Tsukujiri Bunny's muttering, emphasized his tone. What is that? Well, what is that? Tsukujiri Bunny turned around and pretended to shrug her shoulders. You just need to know that it's something you don't need to know. Is that so? Noah narrowed his eyes and asked in a lukewarm tone. You're already being targeted, and you still dare to say that it's something I don't need to know? Targeted? Are you talking about yourself? Sakujiri Bunny sneered. You don't have to worry about this. The person this rat is targeting is not you. Not me? Noah was stunned. Let's stop chatting here. Yu Jianli too grabbed the lurker and lifted him up with one hand. Then, he leaped onto the cliff. Remember to pay more attention to your surroundings like today, exception, brat. Leaving this sentence, Sakujiri Bunny left on her own. Noah stared at the direction Sakujiri Bunny left in thoughtfulness. Chapter 238. On the way back to the dormitory, Noah tried to search for steel installation on the internet, but the result was some irrelevant search results. For this result, Noah was more or less mentally prepared, but Noah was still a bit disappointed. Sure enough, it's troublesome to be in an unfamiliar world. If it was in the world of fairy tale, with the reputation of fairy tale and the power of the Union, if he wanted to get any information, even if it was more secretive, he could generally get it. Even in the world of the Black Bullet, there was the intelligence network of fairy tale that gradually expanded its influence to the whole world. Noah only needed to move his mouth to get the information he wanted. But in this world, Noah was alone. Not to mention the big boss of any force, he didn't even have a friend with a little background. In this case, if he wanted to get any more secretive information, it would be a bit troublesome. How about invading the national database again? But that would most likely only get the project name like last time, right? Noah was troubled as he walked. How about, ask Lilith. Since the Bristol Corporation behind Lilith could become the investor of the Dawn organization, it proved that its power was extraordinary. So, if he asked Lilith, he might be able to get some answers. After making up his mind, Noah suppressed his conjecture about today's matter and returned to the dormitory. Unfortunately, when he returned to the dormitory, Noah would find out. At the very least, today, he couldn't leisurely talk about serious matters. In the luxuriously decorated room, a depressing silence was pervading. Noah, who had just returned to the room, looked at the scene in the room. The corner of his eyes twitched slightly, and he couldn't stay calm. Not to mention Noah, even Lilith, who was sitting at the small white table, glanced at the bed. After a while, a bitter expression appeared on her face. I didn't expect you to go this far. I underestimated your persistence. Julie, who was only wearing a white shirt and holding a pillow, sat on the bed with water droplets on her silver hair. It was obvious that she had just finished showering. She stared at Lilith with her deep red eyes, as if she was guarding against something. Even if it's not Noah's double-tripping blade, the right to sleep with Noah will not be given to you. Julie had said this sentence at least 10 times today. It was as if she was telling others about the determination of this expressionless girl, making them speechless. Hey, Noah. Lilith, who did not expect things to turn out this way, sighed again. Can't you think of something? Who was to blame for this? If it wasn't for Lilith's blabbering during the day and going against Julie all the time, how could things have developed to this situation? Noah could only swallow this bitter fruit and looked at Julie with an awkward smile. Julie, didn't Ivan say anything when you came here? Ivan said that if Lilith was here, even Noah wouldn't do that kind of thing, so he didn't come with me. After saying that, Julie tilted her head and blinked her eyes at Noah. By the way, Noah, what is that kind of thing? It's something you don't need to know. Under Lilith's somewhat playful gaze, Noah awkwardly avoided Julie's curious gaze. Did Ivan only say that? Julie first replied, then she seemed to remember something. However, Ivan seemed to be very angry, and he said that he didn't want to talk to Noah for a while. Noah was silent. What do you want? Lilith seemed to have a headache. You don't want to occupy the bed and not let us sleep, right? We only have one bed. After hearing Lilith's words, Noah suddenly woke up and finally realized a serious problem that had been ignored by him. In this room, there was only one bed. The standard bunk bed in the dormitory had been replaced by a luxurious double bed under Lilith's orders. Therefore, yesterday, Lilith slept with Noah. Therefore, in the future, Noah and Lilith would still sleep together. Lilith. Noah's voice suddenly raised. As you said, there is only one bed, how can we sleep? Allah, just like yesterday. Just sleep together. Lilith didn't take this matter seriously at all. She curled her lips and looked at Noah with interest. No matter what, you are my tripping blade. Just treat it as a special right for you. I don't need it. The person who said this was not Noah, but Julie, whose hair on her head stood up. Noah just needs to sleep with me. That won't do. Lilith retorted. Noah is my tripping blade. Even if he wants to sleep, he will sleep with me. Then I will join too. Julie said such a sentence with a blank expression. I want to sleep together too. Hearing this, Noah and Lilith understood. They understood why Julie had to bring a pillow. Julie had already planned for a long time. The night came quietly. Noah, Noah. Julie, who had been sitting on the bed with a pillow, pulled the corner of Noah's clothes, raised her head, and said eagerly like a cute little animal eager to be fed. It's time to sleep. Yeah. The smile on Noah's face was a bit distorted. It's like announcing a death sentence, Julie tilted her head in confusion. I didn't object to you sleeping with us. Lilith, who was sitting in her exclusive seat and drinking milk tea, closed her eyes. She was wearing pajamas and exuded a leisurely aura. However, this doesn't mean that I will give Noah to you. Julie directly ignored Lilith's words and still pulled Noah's clothes. Her deep red eyes were fluctuating with the light of expectation, making Noah, who still wanted to find an excuse, feel defeated. Sigh. Noah could only sigh, reach out, and touch Julie's head. I really don't know what to do with you. Julie's cheeks were slightly rosy, and there was a look of enjoyment in her eyes. Anyone with a discerning eye could see her mood at this time. You spoil this child too much, right? Lilith seemed to be dissatisfied and muttered like this. Immediately, she put down the empty teacup and stood up. Forget it, let's go to sleep. I still have something to do tomorrow. After saying that, without giving Noah and Julie time to answer, Lilith suddenly turned around and took off her clothes. Wait. Noah, who inadvertently glanced over, almost stared his eyes out. After he reacted, he hurriedly said. Lilith. What are you doing? Even Julie's face was slightly red, and she seemed to finally know how to be shy. On the contrary, Lilith, who was directly involved, didn't even turn her head and said matter-of-factly. What do you think I'm doing? Of course, it's sleeping, isn't it? Why are you taking off your clothes when you're sleeping? Noah's voice had changed. Didn't I say earlier? Lilith didn't have the slightest hesitation because of Noah's presence and said calmly. I won't be able to sleep with clothes on. While speaking, Lilith took off all her pajamas. Her fair skin and slender back instantly entered Noah's vision, revealing her amazing charm. Noah, who didn't have time to stop her, turned his head to avoid Lilith's direction, but soon his eyes widened again. He saw that Julie, who was staring at Lilith with a slightly red face, stared at Lilith for a while, then unbuttoned her shirt and removed the only thing covering her body. The moment Noah's tender body entered his eyes, he was dumbfounded. Then, Julie's voice sounded. I can't lose either. Intuition told Noah. Tonight, taking the initiative would make him completely insomnia and unable to sleep. Chapter 239. When the sun shone into the room, Noah, who was lying stiffly on the bed, finally breathed a long sigh of relief. Ugh, who? On the left and right sides of Noah, two sweet breathing sounds came one after another, as if they were alternately playing a very pleasant piece of music. From time to time, there would be some soft humming sounds, which made people think of elegance. Unfortunately, It was these breathing sounds and soft humming sounds that made people think of elegance that tortured Noah for the whole night, making him unable to sleep all night. Without careful observation, it could be seen that on Noah's body lying on the bed, two slender arms were hugging Noah's neck, and the other was resting on his chest. Ugh! With vague soft humming sounds, the owners of the two arms were tightly attached to Noah's body. A soft touch and beautiful feeling that was difficult to describe with words surrounded Noah in almost 360 degrees, constantly stimulating Noah's nerves. In addition, the sweet breathing was constantly hitting Noah's neck, and the golden and silver hair were more or less scattered on Noah's body. If it was another healthy man, who would be able to sleep peacefully in such an environment? Noah could only rely on his strong willpower to endure this night that was all kinds of torture for him. His body and mind were extremely tired. If it wasn't for the Dawn Star rune that strengthened Noah's spirit by a lot, Noah would have been too tired to move now. And Julie and Lilith, who caused Noah to spend such an uncomfortable night, were sleeping very soundly. Although they were covered with a quilt, their delicate bodies under the quilt tightly sandwiched Noah in the middle as if they had made an agreement, ignoring the feelings of a healthy man like Noah. In fact, it couldn't be said that Julie and Lilith didn't care about Noah's feelings. After all, no matter how Julie treated Noah as a relative, she still had a sense of shame. Lilith seemed to be very bold, but in fact, she was not so open as to be naked in front of a man she only knew for 2 or 3 days. Because of this, last night, Julie and Lilith wrapped themselves tightly with the quilt after taking off their clothes, then they slept peacefully. The problem was that these two girls, who were charming in all aspects, were too comfortable, and they seemed to be extremely insecure. After falling asleep, they immediately used a method that even Noah couldn't break free from. Not only did they treat Noah as a pillow, but they also only used their bodies to bind him. As a result, Noah didn't even sleep for a second all night. "I don't know if I did something wrong that you gave me such a punishment." Noah, who was tightly sandwiched in the middle by two beautiful foreign girls, could only support his tense body and murmured such a sentence as if he wanted to cry but had no tears. It can't be helped. Noah must use various methods to divert his attention. Otherwise, forget about Julie. The feeling of Lilith's plump body clinging to his body was enough to drive Noah crazy. In any case, the night finally passed, and Noah must find a way to get away. Otherwise, when Sarah came to the room and saw her master clinging to Noah in such a way, it would probably cause a lot of trouble that would make Noah even more tired. After struggling for a while, Noah chose the most direct method. Lilith. While paying attention not to touch the places on Lilith that shouldn't be touched, Noah called Lilith in a pleading voice. "Wake up, it's already dawn." "Woo." Lilith frowned slightly, and after a soft groan, there was no sign of waking up. Noah already knew that Lilith was not good at dealing with the morning. Whether it was before or now, the morning was the time when Lilith was least prepared, and it was also the most difficult time for Lilith to survive. So, if this continues, Noah feels that he will be tortured to madness. He may really not be able to hold on and be tortured to a mental breakdown. Lee. See. Noah couldn't care so much. He shook Lilith desperately without any gentlemanly demeanor, trying to wake Lilith up. "Wake up for me. If you don't wake up, I'm leaving." And Lilith didn't know if she was scratched, but she let out a lazy sound. Her eyebrows trembled, and she slowly opened her misty eyes. "Ha." After a cute yawn, Lilith rubbed her eyes and stared at Noah quietly for a while. Then, as if her brain had finally woken up, she said weakly, "I'm sorry, Noah." "What?" "So it's Noah? It's best that you know it's me." Noah's voice sounded even weaker than Lilith's. "So, Lilith, should you let go of me?" "N?" Lilith realized her current state and was stunned for a moment, but she didn't let go as she was told. Instead, she raised her head and showed Noah a dazed smile. "Are you happy?" "I'm not happy." Noah responded with hatred and forcefully pulled his hand out of Lilith's arms. However, such a violent action directly caused Noah's arm to rub heavily on Lilith's body. "Ah." Suddenly, Lilith seemed to feel itchy, and she twisted her body uncontrollably. Immediately, as if all the strength in her body was drained, she fell into Noah's arms when he pulled his hand out. Noah, who hugged Lilith, couldn't help but feel his heart shake fiercely, and he cried out. Yes, 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 yes. I'm sorry. Ugh. Julie, who was lying on the other side of Noah and was also leaning on Noah's body, seemed to be disturbed and twisted her body slightly. As a result, Noah felt his other hand rubbing against something again. His voice was suppressed in his throat all of a sudden, and his chest hurt. Idiot. Lilith, who saw this scene, had a helpless expression on her face. She pressed the sheet covering her body, sat up, and stretched. The infinite beauty was blocked by a thin sheet. But even so, Lilith's actions still exposed her smooth back to Noah's eyes, and the curves of her body were unreservedly displayed. Although it wasn't the first time Noah saw Lilith's beautiful body because of their interactions during this period of time, Noah still felt a little awkward to look at a girl's naked body so confidently. In desperation, Noah could only turn his head to the other side. However, Noah had obviously forgotten about it. On the other side of him, another girl who was not inferior to Lilith was lying there. Not only was her hands tightly hugging Noah's neck, but her head was also leaning on the place closest to Noah. When Noah turned his head, the distance between him and Julie's doll-like delicate face was infinitely close, and their lips almost touched. Noah. Julie seemed to have felt Noah's breath. After murmuring, her other hand also hugged Noah's body tightly. Her whole body snuggled into Noah's arms, and her face rubbed against Noah's face. If Noah didn't turn his head away in time, Julie's lips would have touched Noah's lips just now. Hee hee. Lilith glanced at Noah, who was tightly hugged by Julie and didn't dare to move. His eyes were also trying not to move in her direction. Lilith smiled slyly. If I wake this child up now, will something more interesting happen? Please don't make trouble, Mississippi, Noah said tiredly. You probably don't know what state I'm in now, right? I'm already very tired. Please let me go. Ah, you can't be tired now. Lilith's beautiful face reappeared with the usual confident expression. Today, you have to accompany me to a place. Huh? Noah was stunned. What did you say? Don't make me say it again. With this incomparably arrogant sentence as an answer, Lilith wrapped herself in the sheet and got off the bed, leaving Noah with a bright smile. That's a very special place for me. Chapter 240. In the clear sky, a helicopter with a fuselage made of cold steel slowly landed in the open space in front of an amusement park amidst the whistling of the propeller. The surrounding tourists didn't seem to have expected a helicopter to suddenly land around them. They looked at each other and pointed at the helicopter that landed on the ground, causing quite a lot of noise in the surroundings. Under such circumstances, the door of the helicopter was opened, and a man and a woman also got off the helicopter. No. To be more precise, it should be said that a girl pulled a boy of the same age out of the helicopter in a way that was almost dragging him. Did you see it? Did you see it? In an extremely excited tone, the girl pointed at the amusement park not far away and shouted loudly at the boy under the amazed and surprised gazes of the surrounding tourists. Chanute Amusement Park. It's Chanute Amusement Park. I know, I know. You've been shouting this sentence since you were on the helicopter. You've shouted it more than 10 times. Those who don't know already know it. The boy covered his head and shouted back with an irritated face. Obviously, he was also annoyed. Isn't it just an amusement park? Why are you so excited? This is not an ordinary amusement park. It's Chanute Amusement Park. The girl didn't even turn her head. She looked in the direction of Chanute Amusement Park with sparkling green eyes, and her tone was full of happiness. I've dreamt of coming here at least once. What are you talking about? The boy said with a speechless expression. An amusement park can make you say something like, I want to come here even in my dreams. Isn't your family's Bristol company very powerful? As the daughter of a president, are you afraid that you don't have a chance to go to an amusement park? There is no Chinook amusement park in the UK. The young lady, who was called the daughter of the president by the boy, turned her head and glared at the boy who kept pouring cold water on her with dissatisfaction. So, long before I came to Japan, I decided to come here once. The visitors were naturally Noah and Lilith, who came out of Haolang Academy. Today was not a holiday. That was to say, when Noah and Lilith came to the amusement park, the academy should be in class now. In other words, Noah and Lilith were now skipping class. Originally, due to the uniqueness of Haolang Academy, if it was not a holiday, it was difficult for the students to come out of the artificial island where only one monorail train could enter and exit. The teachers in the academy would not allow the students to go out at this time. Unfortunately, the person who decided to go out wasn't some ordinary student, but the daughter of the president of the Bristol Corporation, one of the investors of the Dawn organization, and the one who had the title of Special, Lilith. Lilith's very special identity allowed her to enjoy privileges that other students and teachers did not have in the school. She also had a helicopter as a means of transportation. Therefore, under Lilith's lead, Noah could be considered to have openly skipped class to come out and play. Of course, he had dragged Noah over without his consent. Sigh. After getting off the helicopter, Noah let out a melancholy sigh. When Julie wakes up and finds herself alone, she must be very lonely, right? I'm already here, and you're still thinking about other girls? The dissatisfaction on Lilith's face became more and more intense. I'm the only one here today, you're not allowed to think about others. He didn't know if it was because she had come to Henny's paradise that she had always dreamed of, but today, Lilith felt that she had lost some of her usual willfulness and confidence, and had more of the appearance of an ordinary girl. Hearing Lilith's words, Sarah, who flew the helicopter as the driver and sent Noah and Lilith here, spoke with an unhappy expression. Miss, I'm here too. Of course, I didn't forget Sarah. Lilith smiled at Sarah. It's just that today is the day I deepen my relationship with my tripping double blade, so Sarah doesn't have to come. W.H. No. Young mistress. Sarah protested vehemently. Objection overruled. Sarah. Lilith, on the other hand, used an even more resolute tone to block Sarah's words. Don't make me say it a second time. Lilith hugged Noah's arm and walked forward quickly while pointing to the front and making a go gesture. Let's go. To Henno Amusement Park. With that said, Lilith completely ignored Sarah's anxious shout behind her. She pulled the powerless Noah and ran forward happily. Being carried by Lilith, Noah, who had no power at all, could only let Lilith run. He could clearly feel the angry gaze from the direction of the helicopter pilot's seat behind him. He let out a second sigh faintly. Are you just going to leave the maid who is loyal to you? Sarah is not a maid. She's a butler. Lilith was like a happy bird that broke out of the birdcage, and the smile on her face was the kind of sweetness and innocence that came from the heart. And, if Sarah comes with me, that overprotective child won't even let me ride the roller coaster. I can't stand it, so I can only leave her behind. Hearing this, Noah could only sigh secretly for the third time. When he was about to say something, he suddenly turned his head and looked to the side. Over there, a group of men and women who looked like lovers and family members were still saluting Noah and Lilith with their eyes. When they saw Noah turn his gaze toward them, they immediately backed away in a secretive manner. However, even if the tourists retreated, Noah still looked in that direction, looking at the corner of a building in front of him without moving his gaze. What's wrong? Lilith, who was hugging one of Noah's arms, suddenly stopped in her tracks. She looked at Noah and stopped as well. Dissatisfaction once again appeared on her face. Didn't I tell you not to think about other things? After saying that, Lilith no longer paid any attention to Noah. She directly dragged Noah and walked toward the entrance of Chanel Park. Today is a special date for you, you should enjoy it. Noah walked forward with Lilith's strength, glancing at the corner from the corner of his eyes. After a while, he smiled indifferently, turned his head, and walked into Henno Amusement Park with Lilith. While Noah and Lilith walked into Heno amusement park, in the corner that Noah was previously looking at, a few black shadows suddenly flashed and disappeared into the crowd. Heno amusement park was an amusement park with the theme of a dark fairy tale. Not only did it have the facilities that ordinary amusement parks had, but it also added the theme of a dark fairy tale. While entertaining, it also gave people a sense of thrilling horror and fantasy. Among so many amusement facilities, Lilith, who was in high spirits, preferred shooting games. It was a game that allowed tourists to sit in a position that moved with the track and enter a haunted house-like facility. They used toy guns that could shoot lasers to shoot at the monsters that appeared one after another along the way. Finally, when they came out of the haunted house, the score was calculated. Participating in this type of game, if the score was high, they could get toys of the theme of this amusement park. These toys had no collection value at all for Noah, but for Lilith, they were as important as treasures. Therefore, Noah was dragged into this facility by Lilith, who had a want look in her eyes. Regardless of whether it was Noah or Lilith, in a situation where even Blaze was a gun, it was naturally impossible for them to miss the target. So, in the end, not only did Noah and Lilith break the previous record, but their score also exceeded the previous record by more than 2 times, which made the staff exclaim, "Sir, you and your girlfriend are really amazing." Lilith, who took the prize from the staff, was stunned together with Noah. Then, Lilith said with a smile, "Of course, after all, it's my most important partner." This so-called partner must be referring to Tripping Double Blade. But in the ears of the staff who didn't know the situation, this so-called partner was literally the meaning. Right away, the figure giggled at Noah's helpless face. "Did you hear that? Most important partner, sir?" Noah rolled his eyes, causing Lilith and the staff to laugh like silver bells. Chapter 241. Time passed by little. Under the leadership of Lilith, who was always in high spirits, Noah ran through more than 1/3 of the amusement facilities in the entire Newfoundland in half a day. In this 1/3 of the amusement facilities, Noah and Lilith played more than a dozen games. When it was almost time for lunch, Lilith had no intention of stopping at all. Realizing that he might have to play with Lilith until dark, Noah first raised his hand to surrender. "If you keep running around, you'll use up all of your stamina." With this as a reason, Noah broke away from Lilith's hand, who had been hugging his arm, and slowed down his footsteps. "Let's walk slowly, or you can go play by yourself." Lilith, who wanted to say something because Noah slowed down his footsteps, couldn't utter a word at once. The excited expression on her face eased a lot. She followed Noah's leisurely footsteps, walking slowly while uttering unpleasant words. "You're right. You're right. A man who only knows how to pour cold water on the opposite sex will not be popular. A woman who only causes trouble for the opposite sex will also be hated," Noah said angrily. "Besides, I'm already giving you face by not leaving directly. I didn't say that I won't play with you. I just want you to slow down. That's not too much, right?" "Oh." Lilith stared at Noah with her beautiful green eyes, and after a while, she smiled inexplicably. "It's really rare." Noah was puzzled. "What is rare?" "Everything about you is rare." Lilith looked at Noah intently and said so. "Before you, those who were around me, whether men or women, whether elders or children, they would not speak to me in such a non-negotiable tone. Have you always been so dominant? Maybe I do like to take the initiative subconsciously." Noah pondered for a while and gave such an answer. "After all, instead of being led by the nose by others, I prefer to take the initiative. It can't be said that I must be above others, but if there is no leeway, then I will be very uncomfortable." While saying such a sentence, Noah also curled his lips. "Besides, let's not talk about whether I'm strong or not for the time being. Lilith, the people around you that you mentioned might have some thoughts. They just hid their voices in front of you, the daughter of the president of the Bristol Company." The implication was that it was not that those who were active around Lilith would not speak to her in a domineering tone, but that they could not speak in such a domineering tone. Because Lilith was the daughter of the president of the Bristol Company, she was the target that they must please. So, I don't hate this place of yours, Lilith replied calmly, but after a while, she burst into laughter. Choosing Noah as the tripping double blade is great. I wonder what kind of person that 9 layers Flo is. What's wrong? Noah asked casually. Are you interested in ninefold? More or less. Lilith answered without the slightest concealment. Shields blaze. If possible, I really want to see it with my own eyes. Really? Noah said faintly. Then you can choose to let ninefold be your double blade. Lilith looked straight at Noah's eyes, her green eyes revealed extreme confidence and pride. Don't make me say it a second time. Obviously, although this headstrong young miss was a little casual, she would not change her mind easily once she had decided on something. Noah, who had difficulties, could only choose to be silent, but then his footsteps slowed imperceptibly. His eyes moved slightly, looked up, and suddenly smiled. Lilith. Lilith tilted her head and put on a confused look. Under such circumstances, Noah said such a sentence. Let's go to the haunted house. This was a place like a graveyard. However, it was different from ordinary cemeteries. Not only was it filled with a gloomy atmosphere, but there were also unknown wails echoing in the surroundings, as if they were the screams of a dying person. Some places were still floating with blue flames, and some places were sprinkled with blood, which made one's hair stand on end. If one took a closer look, they would see that behind some of the tombs, some of the characters from the Diablo series were jumping around like toys with murder weapons in their hands and bodies covered in blood. This was a scene that would make an ordinary person scream out loud. Today, however, it was greeted by an extremely excited voice that clearly carried a happy emotion as it shouted out loud. Wow! Turner! There's a Turner there. It's a living Turner. Accompanied by the sound of excitement, the gloomy atmosphere in the surroundings was suddenly offset and replaced by a somewhat strange atmosphere. Noah, who was holding back Lilith who wanted to run toward the dark fairy tale character doll with blood, had a twitching expression. Come on, this is a haunted house. Why are you so excited? But, that's Turner. Lilith shouted at Noah with an explanation that ordinary people couldn't understand at all. Turner is so cute, how can I be afraid of it? Is it cute? Noah's face was tangled. To be honest, Noah really couldn't see anything cute about these dark fairy tale characters with a hole in their belly, some with intestines flowing out, some with hideous scars on their faces, and some with red blood knives in their hands. By the way, it was you who proposed to come to the haunted house. Lilith put her hands on her waist and looked at Noah. You're not expecting me to jump on you out of fear, are you? For someone who will strip naked in front of you every night and still insist on sleeping with you, do you think it's necessary to do such a thing? Noah asked back. Although I'm naked, I won't let you see it so easily. Lilith said as if it was a matter of course. Even if Noah is a tripping double blade, this right can't be specially given to you. Indeed, even if Lilith will strip naked in front of Noah, at most, she will show her back and buttocks generously. She won't let Noah see her front, and she will wrap herself in a quilt when she sleeps. But Noah wanted to say that he really couldn't see it, but she directly squeezed herself on him and let him feel it. Isn't that worse than seeing it naked? I have a lot of opinions on this issue to you, but let's leave it for next time. Don't you want to know the purpose of my visit to the haunted house? Noah's tone suddenly changed, and he turned his head and looked behind him. I just think that since the guests like to secretly hide in the dark to observe us, they must not want to be discovered by others. So, if we find a place where there is no one, shouldn't the guests appear? The smile on Lilith's face suddenly froze, and then it slowly disappeared. Standing beside Noah, her green eyes were filled with awe-inspiring spirit. Together with Noah, she looked straight ahead. Clap, 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 clap. Almost at the same time, there was a burst of clapping sound. Sure enough, we were discovered. Should I say that they are indeed the surpassers created by Blaze Diabolica? With such a sentence, several figures slowly appeared in front of Noah and Lilith with extremely heavy footsteps as if there was steel under their feet. What appeared in front of Noah and Lilith was a team of about 10 people. When such a 10-person team appeared in front of Noah and Lilith, Lilith showed a stunned expression, but Noah's pupils suddenly shrank. This was because everyone in the 10-man squad was wearing battle suits and helmets that were made of mechanical steel. That posture was exactly the same as the lurker who was discovered and defeated by Noah when he was lurking in the dormitory in the school. Lilith stared at the 10-person team that formed a circle in front of her and frowned. "Who are you?" As soon as the words fell, behind the 10-person team in front of Noah and Lilith, another tall person who was also wearing a combat suit stepped forward and took off the helmet. Chapter 242. Standing in front of the 10-man squad wearing battle suits, it was obvious that he was the leader of this squad. He took off his helmet, revealing a handsome face. It was a face that belonged to the West. The other party was a handsome man from the West. "I don't have a real name anymore. You two can call me K. That is my code name, and also my current name." The handsome man who called himself K had a leisurely and courteous smile on his face. He didn't even look at Noah. He only looked at Lilith and slightly bowed. "Miss Lilith Bristol, on behalf of Equipment Smith, I would like to extend my greetings to you." Equipment Smith? The unfamiliar term made Noah squint his eyes and look in Lilith's direction. Lilith's calm and beautiful face finally showed a slight change. The way she looked at K and the 10-man squad behind him also changed. If it was said that Lilith previously only felt curiosity and amusement towards K and the 10-man squad he brought with him, then after K revealed his name, Lilith truly became wary of K. Obviously, the other party was an opponent that even Lilith couldn't help but be wary of. At the same time, Lilith also seemed to know why these people in front of her were looking for her. Her green eyes gradually flashed with a dangerous light. "What kind of trouble does that troublesome old man plan to bring us again?" "You are mistaken, Miss Bristow." Undoubtedly, the words used were very polite and modest. However, K had a smile full of aggressiveness on his face. It made people involuntarily vigilant, but at the same time, they couldn't help but feel angry. "That sir only wants to invite you over to our side for a chat. He doesn't mean anything else." "Doesn't mean anything else?" Lilith rarely spat out sarcastic words. "Are you sure?" "Of course," K said without a change in expression. "As long as you're obedient." Hearing this, Noah, who had been silently listening to the conversation between Lilith and K, finally understood. These people in front of him wanted to kidnap Lilith. So that's how it is. In front of K, who hadn't turned his gaze towards him, Noah smiled. "That black-bellied rabbit said that the one being targeted wasn't me, but told me to pay attention to my surroundings." So it was referring to Lilith who was being targeted? Without a doubt, the lurker who wore the same combat uniform as K, and the 10-man squad behind him was definitely on K's side. And the other party's reason for lurking in the dormitory was to find an opportunity to kidnap Lilith, or to investigate Lilith's information and pass it back to these accomplices to support their actions. Later, the spy probably noticed the extraordinary relationship between Noah and Lilith, so he tried to get hold of Noah's information. He even blackmailed Noah to achieve the goal of making Lilith submit. In the end, Noah discovered him and counterattacked. Noah? Lilith didn't expect Noah to suddenly say such a thing. She was at a loss. Huh? Across from him, K cast his gaze on Noah for the first time and touched his chin. According to reliable information, the person who had infiltrated Howling Academy with great difficulty to spy on Miss Bristol was discovered yesterday and captured alive. Could it be that you were the one who discovered us? Hearing this, Lilith was slightly shocked, and then looked at K with some anger. You actually sent someone to spy on me? You were too careless, K said nonchalantly, even reminding him out of kindness. You only brought a butler with you when you came to Howling Academy, and today you only brought a classmate with you. Isn't this telling us that we can make a move on you at any time? Lilith took a step forward, but before she could do anything, Noah pressed down on her shoulder. What's their goal? Noah still looked ahead and asked Lilith. What's their goal in kidnapping you? Their real goal isn't me. Lilith looked coldly at Kay and explained. Their real goal is the Dawn organization, and their real goal should be to obtain the Dawn star pattern. I'm probably just a hostage they're using to negotiate with the Dawn organization. As the daughter of the president of the Bristol Corporation, if they kidnapped Lilith, these people could indeed use Lilith as a hostage to negotiate with the Dawn organization. After all, not only was Lilith an individual with a special research result in the Dawn organization, namely the special blaze, but her own company was also the investor of the Dawn organization, so her identity was very special. Originally, obtaining that witch would have been the best result, but the witch's bodyguards are too tight, so we could only make a move on you since your guard is relatively lax. Regarding this, Kay did not hide it, but corrected her with a smile. Furthermore, what are you talking about? That lord is also very interested in you. Since they wanted to obtain the Dawn star pattern, then the people behind them definitely wanted to steal the research results of the Dawn organization. Lilith was a special individual in this so-called research result. If they were interested in the Dawn star pattern, then they would definitely be interested in Lilith. This was not strange. It was conceivable that if Lilith fell into the hands of these people, then it would not be strange if the people behind them directly captured Lilith and dissected her for research. Please don't resist. Saying this, Kay raised his hand. Suddenly, in a series of subtle mechanical sounds, the 10-person team behind Kay raised a submachine gun in their hands and aimed it at Noah and Lilith. We've received orders to be a little rough here, and it just so happens that your classmate is here. If he brings back the information that you're with us, we can save a lot of trouble. Kay's smile became dark. Please don't resist. After saying this, under KS signal, 2 people wearing combat suits walked towards Noah and Lilith. The others still held their guns and aimed at Noah and Lilith. It was believed that as long as Noah and Lilith made any meaningless movements, the triggers of these submachine guns would immediately be pulled. At that time, not to mention Noah, even Lilith's hands and feet would be pierced, and her ability to resist would be eliminated. However, whether it was Noah or Lilith, they were not the kind of people who would be captured without a fight. Especially Noah. After all, Noah always did not like to give the initiative to others. Lilith. As if ignoring everyone present, Noah asked with a relaxed face. How many can you deal with? This sentence directly stunned everyone present, and for a moment, they actually did not react. Kay also frowned slightly, and the gaze he used to look at Noah gradually turned cold. Only Lilith, after being stunned for a moment, smiled sweetly. If they were just ordinary people, even if they were well-trained soldiers, 100 of them would not be my opponents, but they don't seem to be ordinary soldiers. That black-bellied rabbit called the thing on their bodies steel installation. I think they should be able to rely on that thing to reach the same level as surpassers, Noah said as if there was no one else present. So, it's best to treat them as existences that surpass humans. Is that so? Lilith brushed her bright-colored long hair. Then how many can you deal with? Me? Noah laughed, and laughed as if he was mocking his opponent. Although I won't say that 100 of them are not my opponents, 10 or 20 of them are not a problem. The 10-man team wearing steel installation all let out angry gasps and raised the guns in their hands. Kay looked coldly at Noah, and he raised his hand and waved it down without hesitation. Thus, the 8 people standing behind him and the 2 people who approached all pulled the triggers of the submachine guns in their hands. Da-da-da-da-da. In the next moment, along with the flames, the muzzles of every submachine gun spat out fatal bullets, forming a barrage that cut through the air like a giant net, enveloping the front. Chapter 243. Da, 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 da. The sound of the submachine gun firing seemed to have turned into an echo that constantly lingered above the haunted house's cemetery. Along with the flames, bullets shot out from the submachine gun and rained down on Noah like a storm. Under the cover of the rain of bullets, even a surpasser with a relatively low level would not be able to dodge. If one wanted to see the trajectory of the bullets, one would need to be at least level 3 to be able to do something. Even Noah, whose abilities were suppressed to level 2 under the effect of limit, was still unable to clearly see the trajectory of the bullets, let alone clearly see the storm of bullets coming from the submachine gun barrage. However, it did not matter if he could not see the trajectory of the bullets, because Noah still had his sensory ability. Under the effect of Noah's sensory ability, the position of every bullet that was enveloped like a giant net was clearly imprinted in Noah's mind, constantly triggering Noah's nerves. Therefore, when Lilith's body tensed up due to the other party's shooting, and her beautiful face began to waver, Noah had already moved. Almost before the gunshots could be heard, a crisp "paw" sound rang out first. It was the sound of Noah suddenly reaching out and grabbing the top of a tombstone in the fake cemetery next to him. Tightly grasping the top of the fake tombstone, Noah coldly shouted, and pulled the tombstone out of the ground with force. Who? In the next second, under the movement of Noah's arm, the huge tombstone turned into a huge shadow, bringing a gust of wind. Like a mountain, it pressed down in front of Noah. Ding 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 ding. Bright sparks splashed out from the tombstone that turned into a huge shadow, and the surface of the tombstone made a series of crisp knocking sounds. Not only did it block all the bullets from the submachine gun, but it also flew out without any reduction in momentum. Like a rock, it fiercely smashed in the direction of Kay and the others. Everyone, including Kay, was shocked. They didn't have time to think. Other than Kay, who quickly retreated, the others all rolled on the ground in a sorry state. Dong! The tombstone, which was not small in size, heavily smashed into the ground. In the midst of the explosion, it shattered into pieces and stirred up a cloud of dust. Just as the group of people wearing combat suits hurriedly jumped up from the ground, a man and a woman's voice rang out. Blaze! The voice calling for souls echoed, the brilliant light of the star pattern flickered. Bang! Dense red flames abruptly ignited in the air, transforming into two pitch-black weapons that fell into the hands of their respective owners. It was a gun. It was a revolver with a large caliber and a unique rifle that had clearly been modified. Bang 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 bang. Completely different from the sweeping shots of submachine guns, the heavy gunshots that made people's hearts skip a beat rang out one after another. Ugh! Ugh! Ah! Accompanied by the sound of gunshots, every time a gunshot rang out, a person wearing a combat suit would let out a mournful cry. The submachine gun in his hand slipped from his hand and heavily fell to the ground. He didn't even struggle for a few moments before he was no longer able to move. There were a total of 7 people who fell. Other than Kay, a total of 7 out of the 10-man team wearing combat uniforms had fallen. The other 3 people's reactions were too slow. They hadn't stabilized from their rolling state and stood up. Instead, the bullets that were shot at them hit the ground where they had just rolled a second ago, allowing them to escape death. Kay, on the other hand, realized that something was wrong when he retreated because of the tombstone. He dodged and hid behind a fake dead tree to avoid the incoming bullets. Thus, when the 3 people finally stabilized their bodies after rolling on the ground and stood up, they couldn't help but be shaken when they saw their fallen comrades. This, not good. Captain. Hearing the shouts of his 3 subordinates, Kay's face was calm. Through the dead tree that was used as a cover, his cold gaze shot straight at Noah and Lilith, who were aiming at his 3 subordinates. His back was slightly bent down, like a beast that had discovered its prey. Noah, who had focused his attention on Kay, used his perception ability to sense that something was wrong. The movements of his hands suddenly stopped. Noah's keen combat experience told him that Kay was a truly difficult opponent to deal with. Bang bang bang. However, Lilith, who didn't have Noah's sharp perception, naturally focused most of her attention on the 3 people in front of her who had raised their guns. The corner of her mouth curved up, and the rifle in her hand continuously shot at the 3 people. Pung! It was also at this moment that Kay, who was hiding behind the dead tree, heavily stomped his foot. His body was like an arrow leaving a bow as he flew out and instantly appeared in front of Lilith. Swoosh! In the midst of the tearing sound in the air, two short knives suddenly appeared in Kay's hands. With a spin, they brought about a fatal cold light as they fiercely chopped down at Lilith. Under Kay's powerful chop, in the air, an ear-piercing sonic boom continuously sounded. Noah, who was already on guard against Kay, narrowed his eyes. Just as he was about to make a move, the next scene that happened made him stop in his tracks. A surprised expression appeared on his face. Lilith's green eyes revealed an expression of astonishment. It was obvious that she was caught unprepared by Kay's sudden ambush. However, Lilith didn't panic. Instead, she suddenly raised the rifle in her hand and held it horizontally in front of her chest like a club. Ding! The two short knives that were chopping at Lilith fiercely landed on the body of the rifle, causing the sound of metal clashing. It also brought about a large amount of sparks that sputtered out. TCH. Kay made a speechless sound. Ha! On the other hand, Lilith let out an aggressive roar. She didn't care about the rifle that was still blocking Kay's dagger attack. She lifted her slender leg and swung it. Hoo! Turning into an afterimage, her thigh that was like a long whip mixed with the sound of the wind was fiercely swung in Kay's direction. Pa! Lilith's crazily swung thigh collided with Kay's abruptly raised knee. Immediately after, it was as if both sides had collided with a wall. Under the influence of a great force, they involuntarily retreated, creating a distance between them. In that instant, Lilith raised the rifle in her hand and aimed it at Kay's head. The pitch-black muzzle imprinted itself into Kay's eyes. Kay's pupils shrank and he turned his head without hesitation. Bang! In the midst of the muffled gunshot, the bullet formed by mental strength cut through the air, brushed past Kay's cheek, and shot to the rear. Bang bang bang! Without the slightest hesitation, Lilith pulled the trigger of the rifle in her hand one after another. Rubbing against the atmosphere, the sharp sound of the bullets breaking through the air suddenly approached Kay one after another, forcing Kay's figure to retreat somewhat pathetically. From Kay's movements and the fact that he was still able to dodge Lilith's shots despite his sorry state, Kay's combat strength was completely different from the 10 people that were shot down by Noah and Lilith. Noah's feeling was correct. Among these people, Kay was the only one that was truly difficult to deal with. Based on his current combat strength, Kay's combat strength was at least at the level of rank 3, and was even close to rank 4. And in a fight with such an opponent, Lilith seemed to be at ease. How could Noah not be surprised? Chapter 244. After knowing that Lilith had the blaze from the rifle, Noah had already guessed that Lilith's combat power was different from ordinary surpassers. Although surpassers were existences that surpassed humans, there were also high and low degrees of surpassing humans. Otherwise, there would not be the concept of a rank. In a situation where one had to be at least grade 3 to be able to more or less see the trajectory of the bullets, one didn't even need to think to know how much of an advantage a person with a blaze would have when other people only had a blaze with a cold weapon. Therefore, Lilith's strength was definitely not simple. According to Noah's knowledge, Lilith was the same as him, rank 2. However, with the help of the blaze from the rifle, even if Lilith was only rank 2, he believed that ordinary rank 3 would not be Lilith's opponent. This was Noah's previous opinion of Lilith. But now, Lilith's performance made Noah realize that his evaluation of her was a lot lower. According to Lilith's current strength, as long as she was not rank 4, in a one-on-one situation, there was basically no one who could pose a threat to her. Noah did not know that in fact, Lilith was the same as him. When she entered the school, she had defeated a rank 3 teacher. In order to test the unique blaze of the rifle, Lilith was also once arranged to fight with a rank 3 teacher when she entered the sister school in the United Kingdom. As a result, Lilith defeated her opponent without any damage. When she was still rank I. Although she could not be compared to the non-human Noah who could defeat a rank 3 teacher with the strength of an ordinary person, Lilith's record was equally astonishing. After all, it was only a difference of one level. The difference between level I and level 2 could be counted in multiples. The difference of 2 levels was to the extent that one could not help but lose the will to fight. Even so, Lilith was still able to defeat a rank 3 with the strength of rank I without any damage. It was obvious that the blaze was not the only special relationship. This point could be seen from K, who was forced to retreat by Lilith. He still had a smile on his face, but there was no smile in his eyes. You are indeed worthy of being called a special existence. The information is indeed correct. The daughter of the Bristol family is not easy to deal with. It's a pity that even I can't feel happy after being praised by you. Lilith probably also realized that K was not easy to deal with. She raised the rifle and aimed at him, her eyes slightly narrowed. Noah was right. You guys are also existences that surpass humans, right? It is just as you said. Kay smiled in a pretentious manner. Just like how the surpassers rely on the daybreak star pattern to obtain strength that surpasses humans, we, the God Destroyer Squad, rely on the steel armor on our bodies to obtain strength that surpasses humans. God Destroyer Squad? Lilith slightly widened her eyes. Even Noah was startled for a moment, then he laughed. He laughed with disdain as he pointed the revolver in his hand at Kay. Are you referring to yourself? Noah then pointed the revolver in his hand at K's subordinates who had fallen to the ground. Or are you referring to them? Currently, the steel armor is still an incomplete product that has not been completely adjusted, so it can only display strength of this level. The God Destroyer naturally cannot do that. Kay still had a refined and courteous appearance, but because it was too artificial, it made people frown. What Kay said next completely revealed that he was not as courteous as he appeared on the surface. There is no other way. We can only treat the two of you as obstructions and begin the operation with the goal of eliminating the two of you. Kay, who was dancing the two short knives in his hands like a windmill, finally stopped smiling and looked coldly at Noah. Our target is only Miss Bristol. If you can step down, would be very grateful. Step down. Noah. Lilith maintained her posture with the gun raised and said these words with incomparable confidence without turning her head. Even if you don't do anything, Noah, I can take care of this guy. Noah immediately glanced at Lilith, who had a confident smile on her face, and then looked at Kay, who was beginning to emit a murderous aura, and immediately sighed. Although I'd like to just watch from the side, Lilith, this guy isn't the only enemy here. Hearing this, Lilith seemed to have thought of something and looked to the side. There were still 3 of K's subordinates still holding their guns and staring at them with hostility. Obviously, before K's sneak attack began, Lilith's shots at the 3 of them had all missed. 1-on-1 and 1-on-3. Lilith instantly understood Noah's meaning, and a helpless expression appeared in her green eyes. Then, which side do you choose? Of course, the side that is more troublesome and infuriating. Noah's gaze directly landed on Kay, and a hint of a smile appeared in his dark pupils. After all, you are my important partner, aren't you? Lilith was stunned, and then a big smile appeared on her charming face. That's true. Are the two of you done talking? On the opposite side, Kay lowered his head and said in a low voice after seeing Noah and Lilith's calm and unruffled performance. Then, I should also eliminate those who are in the way. Perhaps he was impatient with the relaxed atmosphere between Noah and Lilith, but Kay suddenly clenched his fists and tightly gripped his 2 short knives, and the murderous aura on his body was released bit by bit. Let me see if your strength is as powerful as your mouth, since you can say such big words in front of the daughter of Bristol. Under the influence of the murderous aura that Kay released without hiding anything, the surrounding temperature seemed to have dropped a little. This made the relaxed expression on Lilith's face disappear first, and it turned into a dignified expression, and even a little ugly. Even if her strength was not bad, Lilith had probably never faced such a dense murderous aura, and it made Lilith's body tense involuntarily. Noah, on the other hand, stared closely at the murderous Kay, his eyes incomparably calm. How many people have you killed? Who knows? Kay's smile had already become somewhat cold. You only need to know that you will become the next one. Is that so? Noah faintly smiled, and his pitch-black eyes were also filled with murderous intent. That's good. This way, I don't have to be merciful to you. A chill suddenly surged in K's eyes. The short knives in his hands fiercely shook, and traces of cold light suddenly flashed. Immediately after, K used the short knives in his hands as throwing tools. With a swing of his hands, the two short knives turned into two cold lights, and with a sound of breaking air, shot explosively towards Noah. Ding! Too lazy to even dodge, Noah directly swung the revolver in his hands, and with a burst of wind, streaked across the air, and collided with the incoming cold lights, knocking the two short knives away. And at this time, K's body moved, and two short knives appeared in his hands. Like silver snakes, he waved them wildly, and cunningly and ruthlessly stabbed towards the vital points on Noah's body. Chi-chi. Numerous afterimages of the short knives mercilessly stabbed towards Noah's body. The tip of Noah's feet touched the ground, and his body lightly moved, narrowly dodging each and every one of K's swift and fierce stabs. K seemed to be able to see Noah's calm expression while he was dodging. His expression turned serious, and his palm struck the bottom of the short knife in his hand. Shio! The sudden violence caused the short knife to shoot out like a bullet. It was like a poisonous snake that was about to devour a person as it rushed in front of Noah. Shwa! But at this time, a hand suddenly shot out, and grabbed the sharp blade of the short knife. At the same time, the hand actually used force to grip the short knife. Kacha! The fragile short knife broke into two halves. Chapter 245. Kacha. Amidst the heart-wrenching cracking sound, the sharp dagger was directly broken into two by Noah's actions. Perhaps K wanted to use a surprise attack to disrupt Noah's battle rhythm, so as to cause effective damage to Noah. But K simply did not know that under the effect of Noah's sensory ability, this kind of unexpected battle method was basically useless. Thus, once the dagger was broken, K's expression suddenly tensed up, and his body instantly retreated. While K was retreating, K's hand reached for his waist and pulled out a weapon at lightning speed. Surprisingly, it was the submachine gun that K's subordinates were also using. However, just as K was about to pull the trigger of the submachine gun in his hand, in front of him, Noah's feet turned, and a beautiful flash of light appeared under his feet. Pung! At that moment, the ground under Noah's feet was directly crushed by the shockwave from Noah's feet, and Noah himself was pushed by the shockwave, his body like a ray of light, directly shooting out. K only felt a blur in front of him, and then, a pair of cold, pitch-black eyes followed by a figure appeared in front of him. Noah's speed made K's heart tremble. At this moment, Noah suddenly swung out a solid punch without any fancy moves, and fiercely slammed it into the submachine gun in K's hand. The vigorous force was like water flowing out of a dam, crazily venting out. Pung! After the sound of an explosion, K's wrist went numb, and the submachine gun in his hand actually made a slight kacha sound from Noah's punch. That was the sound of the body of the submachine gun cracking. K's heart trembled again, and before he could react, a mocking voice rang out. This is the so-called God Destroyer team? You want to destroy a god with this level of strength? K's face turned black and white under Noah's mocking evaluation, and even his eyes turned slightly red. The murderous aura on his body surged like a violent storm. You're just a student who hides in a completely useless school playing a game of becoming stronger. What right do you have to evaluate me? K removed his pretense of politeness and stared fixedly at Noah. You don't even know if you've seen blood before, I'll let you experience true cruelty. After he finished speaking, K's feet stomped, and his body lowered, his speed suddenly increased by several levels, and he charged straight in Noah's direction. Swish! A short knife cut through the air like lightning, and under K's brandishing it made a sharp sound, fiercely piercing towards Noah. Duh! Noah immediately once again tiptoed, and his body lightly moved to the side. Chi! The sharp short knife brushed past Noah's shoulder and flew past. However, the short knife that missed suddenly trembled, and strangely curved into an arc, flicking towards Noah's head. Noah's expression didn't change, and he tilted his head back. This time, the short knife brushed past Noah's face and flew past. At this moment, Noah stomped his feet on the ground, and his body spun at high speed like a top. He threw out a kick, and a kick that contained a powerful force immediately and fiercely whipped towards Kay's direction. Pung! Kay, who had hurriedly raised his dagger to block the kick, was forced back a few steps by the force of the kick that landed on his dagger. Without any hesitation, Kay used the force of the shockwave to retreat. With a flip of his hand, he pulled out another dagger. Seeing this, Noah's eyes slightly narrowed. His body moved, and he turned into a blurry black shadow, and violently rushed out. After suffering once, Kay also understood how proficient Noah's fighting ability was. He didn't dare to let Noah get close to him again. He let go of the short knife in his hand, and with a half turn of his body, he ferociously kicked the short knife's handle. The short knife was like a ray of silver light, and with the ferocious force of Kay's kick, it viciously shot towards Noah's eyes. Noah's body paused, and then he suddenly jumped, and the tip of his foot accurately tapped on the short knife's handle and the next moment, the foot that Noah tapped on the short knife's handle flashed with a brilliant light, and the surrounding space suddenly appeared with bursts of light, converging under Noah's feet. Seeing this scene that had happened once before, Kay's pupils shrunk to the size of a needle. Pung! At the same time, the light that had converged under Noah's feet exploded, shattering the short knife under his feet. His body once again turned into a flash of light, and like a ghost, he appeared in front of Kay. This time, Noah didn't give Kay the chance to react. His eyes trembled, and he extended his hand. Noah's elbow was like a thick stick, and it ruthlessly smashed down on Kay's hand that was previously holding the short knife that was shot towards his eyes. Caw! The elbow that landed on Kay's wrist exploded with a powerful force, and it directly caused Kay's wrist to emit a crisp sound of breaking bones. If this attack had landed directly on Kay's hand, then Kay's hand might have been crippled. However, because the armor-like armored steel also covered Kay's hand, the cracking sound caused by Noah's elbow smashing into Kay's hand wasn't the sound of bones breaking, but the sound of the armored steel armor on Kay's hand shattering. Even so, Noah's attack only gave Kay enough time to change his expression. Immediately after, Noah's eyes flashed with a hint of ruthlessness. He raised his fist that was wrapped in a strong wind, and heavily smashed it towards Kay's head, the only part that wasn't protected by the armored steel armor. The incoming strong wind caused Kay's face to break out in a cold sweat with a schwa sound. Looking at the fist that was rapidly enlarging in his eyes, Kay hurriedly raised his hand to protect his face. Pung! Noah's fist, which was enveloped by a strong gust of wind, struck Kay's hand that was protecting his face. It also landed on the armored steel armor on Kay's arm. With a low sound, it blocked Noah's fist. However, Kay didn't have enough time to relax. In front of him, shadows of fists suddenly flashed. Each shadow of fists contained strength that was definitely not weaker than the previous one. Along with the air currents, they enveloped Kay in a series of sonic booms. Peng peng peng. The shadows of fists were like raindrops pouring down on Kay's arm. Kacha kacha. The armored steel armor on Kay's arm continuously emitted cracking sounds. Pung. At a certain moment, with a muffled sound, the armored steel armor on Kay's arm exploded. Pung. Noah's eyes turned cold. He clenched his fist and mercilessly punched Kay's arm, which was only left with the strength of a mortal. Kacha. This time, the cracking sounds really did resonate from the bones in Kay's arm. Goo woo. Kay, whose arm was broken, finally squeezed out a painful groan from his throat. At this moment, Noah didn't have the slightest bit of hesitation. He swung his fist, and under Kay's horrified gaze, his fist went through the air and wind, heading straight for Kay's face. Pung! In the end, his hard fist still made contact with Kay's face. Poochie! This solid punch directly caused Kay to violently spit out a mouthful of blood. His body was like a bird with broken wings as he flew backwards, heavily crashing into a tombstone not far away. Dong! The terrifying force caused the tombstone behind Kay to collapse. The fragments of the tombstone also turned into a pile of rubble, burying Kay's figure within. The battle ended abruptly and quickly. Cough, cough, cough. Kay, who was buried within the rubble, coughed out a few mouthfuls of blood. Then, a black shadow slowly covered Kay's field of vision. How does it feel to lose to a student like me, who hides in a completely useless school and plays a game of becoming stronger? Noah looked down at Kay from above. Mr. Who understands true cruelty. Chapter 246. The intense pain on his face made Kay's consciousness a little fuzzy. But even so, Kay still stared at Noah, who was looking down at him from above. After a while, he spat out a few words. Unlike the students who were leisurely training in Haolang Academy, the soldiers of the God Destroyer troop, led by Kay, were trained in an environment where they could die at any time. Thus, disregarding the physical condition and other external conditions, just in terms of combat experience and techniques, Kay, who was trained in an environment where he could die at any time, could not possibly lose to a group of students who were leisurely training in the academy. Even in terms of external conditions, even if Kay's installation steel was an incomplete product that had not been completely adjusted, it would not be a problem for him to match the physical condition of a surpasser who had been strengthened by the daybreak star pattern of level 2. In a situation where he did not lose to his opponent in terms of combat experience, techniques, and other internal conditions, as well as physical, mental, and other external conditions, why would he be defeated without being able to retaliate, and lose so miserably? Kay did not understand. No matter how he thought about it, he could not understand. But if he simply thought about it, wouldn't the answer be obvious very quickly? The installation steel on his body was probably able to match the physical condition of a level 2 surpasser. And the level of the opponent in front of him should be level 2, based on the information he had. Then, in a situation where his physical condition was the same, yet he still lost to his opponent, wasn't the answer obvious? His opponent's combat experience and techniques were above his own. This was the reason. But Kay could not accept this reason at all. Of course, there was no way that Kay would know that in order to defeat him, Noah had even used his newly learned Great Leap. That technique that had shocked even the level V Moonlit Glass Rabbit when it was level 1, when used with the level 2 physical strength, how much would Noah's speed increase? This was the real reason why Kay, whose overall strength had reached rank 3 and was close to rank 4, was defeated so quickly. Although Kay didn't know about the Great Leap Forward, he knew that he had lost so quickly because of Noah's terrifying speed. His body immediately trembled, and his bloodshot eyes were fixed on Noah, filled with hatred. If it wasn't for the fact that the adjustment of the steel installation hadn't been completed. Is this what someone who understands true cruelty would say? Noah sneered. You, the guy who understands true cruelty, is actually someone who doesn't even understand that the outcome of a fight represents everything? After saying that, Noah revealed a look of pity. What's the difference between this kind of daydreaming and the students you despise? Kay's blood-stained face contorted. He didn't say anything, but the hatred in his eyes as he looked at Noah grew stronger and stronger. However, for Noah, this wasn't the first time he had to endure this kind of gaze. Didn't you just say that I don't even know if I've seen blood before? Lowering his eyes, Noah looked at Kay, who was lying in front of him, and sneered. He raised the revolver in his hand, which he hadn't used even once in his fight with Kay, and aimed it at Kay's head. Then let me tell you the answer. After saying that, Noah's body began to emit a strange feeling, causing Kay, who was lying on the ground, to have a drastic change in expression. This strange feeling, for Kay, was already as familiar as eating a meal. Killing intent. true killing intent. The student in front of him, whom he disdained, actually had this kind of true killing intent. If it was killing intent, Kay wouldn't be surprised at all. After all, as long as one was a human, it was possible to have evil intentions towards others, and develop killing intent. But if it was killing intent, it was a type of temperament that only those who had killed before would have. In other words, the student in front of him had killed before. Furthermore, with this kind of true killing intent, how could the blaze not turn into a deadly weapon when used with hostility, malice, and killing intent? As long as Noah pulled the trigger in this state, then Kay's life would end there. However, in this situation where his heart was filled with the threat of death, Kay didn't feel any fear. Instead, he laughed, and the more he laughed, the louder and crazier he laughed. So that's how it is. So that's how it is. No wonder you could defeat me. Kay, who was lying on the ground, laughed joyfully while looking at Noah mockingly. So, you are also a demon who can use the weapon in your hand to take other people's lives. You are one of my own kind. Noah suddenly raised his eyes, and the finger that was on the trigger pulled without hesitation. Pang! The muffled sound of a gunshot rang out. Shio! The pitch-black bullet pierced through the air and flew upwards, shooting into the ceiling of the haunted house. Noah stared blankly at the revolver, that he didn't know when it had been placed on his hand. He raised the revolver that he had aimed at Kay, and the white slender hand that moved his hand so that the muzzle of the revolver was facing the sky. He turned his head and looked to his side. A pair of jade eyes appeared in Noah's eyes. Not far away, the three people who should have been fighting with the owner of this pair of beautiful eyes had all fallen to the ground. It's fine if you stop here. The hand that was tightly holding Noah's gun raised the muzzle of the revolver to the sky. The culprit who had saved the lives of her enemies was still holding the rifle in one hand, and her gem-like eyes met Noah's gaze. Don't continue. Noah didn't avoid the pair of jade eyes that were less than 10 centimeters away from him. He looked directly at Lilith. He wanted to kill me, and even kidnapped you. Who knows how many people he has killed? Noah's implication was that such a person deserved to die. I understand. Lilith's eyes fluctuated with a strange expression. It was a feeling called heartache. I never say what I have said once, but this time, I want to tell you once again that we are the same kind. Lilith said word by word. So, I will never admit that you are the same kind as this guy. Noah's eyes also flickered, but he still didn't move his gaze away. It was as if he avoided Lilith's gaze, he would lose. Is it because of this reason that you stopped me? If Lilith stopped him because of this reason, then Noah didn't mind telling Lilith the truth. However, in the next moment, Lilith's face that was always full of confidence showed a sad smile for the first time, and she said such a sentence. I just don't want your soul to be stained with the color of blood again because of this guy. This sentence deeply touched Noah's heart. The scene fell into a stifling silence. After a long time, Noah lowered the hand that was holding the gun, and the revolver turned into a flame and disappeared. This made Lilith reveal an extremely beautiful smile, and at the same time, it also made Kay roar in excitement. Kill me. Why didn't you kill me? Whether I kill you or not, it's not up to you, but up to me. You should be glad that you were lucky enough to escape. Noah glanced at Kay, whose face was twisted in excitement. Let me tell you, I'm not the same kind as you. At least, the guys that died in my hands deserve to die, and some of the people that died in your hands must be innocent. After leaving this sentence, Noah no longer paid attention to Kay, and walked past the attackers on the ground, toward the exit. Behind him, Lilith was also following beside Noah. Her footsteps were as heroic as usual, carrying with them an unusual charm. Her charming face that used to carry a confident smile was now wearing a satisfied smile. Immediately after, Lilith hugged Noah's arm and buried her happy face into Noah's shoulder. Sure enough, it's great to have Noah become my tripping blade. Noah smiled bitterly. You're tuning into the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.